Good evening, Mayor and Council, as well as members of the public. Welcome to our Committee of the Whole meeting for December the 1st. I would like to remind everyone before we start that no decisions are made at Committee of the Whole meetings. These are meetings merely for Council to hear information before decisions are made, as well as I am one of 6 other members of Council who will be rotating through the chair as Deputy Mayor. It's just my term as of right now. So for that, I would like to call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. tonight. The first order of business on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please, Council? Councillor Singh?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Council? All in agreement? Voted unanimously. The next is for the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Council, can I get a motion for that? Councillor McDonald?
I motion to approve the minutes from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting.
Council, all in favor? And that is approved unanimously. So we will get on to the first order of our meeting, which is the business section. And at this time, I'd like to call up Ms. Tomes, Senior Planner for the Town of Cochrane, to present the Telecom Tower Type A Letter of Concurrence to Council. Good evening.
Good evening. All right, it's been a while. Good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. My name is Nicole Tomes, as Councillor Patika said, and I work as a Senior Planner in the Planning Services Department. I'm here to present for you this evening. The purpose of this presentation is for a proposed telecommunications tower application on the Ag Society lands. The closest neighborhood is Heritage Hills and West Hawk at the north boundary of the town. This is a more zoomed in view. The location is just west of the existing RV storage area in the Canadian Baptist Seminary lands and just east of the pipeline corridor that starts at the Interpipeline facility north of Cochrane. This part of the parcel is still within the Ag Society lands. This is another view of the proposed tower from the southeast corner of the site, looking towards the RV storage at the Baptist Seminary. The location was chosen to provide the required coverage for emergency and drop calls for this area of town, as well as it meets the setbacks for this type of tower to existing residential lands. The proposal was changed to reflect feedback from the engagement that was done. The original proposal was for a 60-meter lattice style tower and was changed to a 45-meter monopole style, which is a preferred style within our policy. And the lower height is also in response to concerns from JL Developments, which were received during the engagement period, who is the developer for the neighborhood of West Hawk. This is the site plan that's attached to your report. It outlines the specific location of the tower itself on the northern portion of the parcel and the proposed access, which is just to the south and uses an existing access point and an existing internal gravel road that will be extended to the proposed tower. This is a photo simulation of the view of the constructed tower facing south, with the photo taken from Township Road 262. This is a photo simulation of the view of the constructed tower facing north, with the photo taken from the existing access that will be used to the south. And this is a photo simulated view of the 60-meter constructed tower facing west from 207 Sunset Drive, which is the Allura apartment buildings. This one is actually from the original 60 tower application, as I mentioned. However, given the impact of this tower and that the tower height was since reduced, a new one was not required. The proposed tower was evaluated within the existing policy and meets all of the sections related to disguising, build form, screening, signs, and lighting, as well as opportunities for co-location in the future. The location was chosen to increase the distances away from residential properties while providing the most efficient increase in service coverage. The protocols recommend a setback of 100 meters for towers that are 31 meters to 45 meters in height. And the closest existing residential property is approximately 150 meters from the subject property, which exceeds the recommended setback. Once West Hawk is built, the closest will be approximately 125 meters, which will still exceed the recommended setback. Public notification and engagement is required for this type of communication tower in the policy, this one being for a type A application as mentioned. After multiple rounds of discussion over other sites, this site was chosen this year. Notification of the project and invitation to the open house was sent out in May of this year. The public open house was then held in June, which kicked off the response period for the applicant, where they responded to emails and held meetings with those concerned. The application was received by the town in August and then adjusted in response to feedback in October, and now is before you in December. The application achieves policy alignment with Envision Cochrane 2050, the 2022 to 2025 strategic plan, as well as the Cochrane Sustainability Plan. It is understood within Envision Cochrane that infrastructure to support mobile, phone, and internet is provided by private utility providers, and that this type of communication cannot be located underground due to the need for line of sight for the equipment on the towers to surrounding towers. It increases livability and connectivity to the principles within the two of the principles within the strategic plan by providing utility connectivity required for residents, visitors, and businesses alike to live, work, and thrive. And in the sustainability plan, it aligns with Pathway 1 that we are socially responsible and are empowered community as the applicant followed the public consultation requirements outlined in our policy, as well as Pathway 11, whenever you are in Cochrane, you are close and connected by providing utility connectivity to an area which is needing additional coverage, in addition to adhering to the telecommunications policy. Importantly, this application and Cochrane's policy does not fall within the municipality's approving authorities, statutory planning, or responsibilities outlined in the Municipal Government Act. The Federal Minister of Innovation and Science and Economic Development Canada, formerly Industry Canada, is the approving authority for the development and operation of telecommunication towers. Cochrane's role in the process is to either issue a letter of concurrence or a letter of non-concurrence. The policy that Cochrane adopted established procedural standards that will allow the town of Cochrane to effectively participate in and influence the placement of telecommunication structures proposed within town limits, as well as methods of communication to residents, and to help us decide which letter to issue. Either way, the applicant will include Cochrane's letter in their federal application for approval. It should be noted, however, that issuing a letter of non-concurrence does not prevent ISED Canada from approving the application. So within our adopted town policy, or this decision framework outlines this process which the applicants must follow and determines whether or not the town should support a telecommunication tower application in order to achieve concurrence. It is organized by which type of antenna structure is proposed, and as mentioned before, this application is for a type A structure. So as described and summarized in the report in this presentation, the application followed the process outlined for type A protocols, or proposals, including exceeding minimum setbacks, selecting a good location which met technical coverage requirements, met design standards from the policy which mitigated impacts. It's tall enough for future co-location opportunities, and it followed the public consultation process outlined in our policy and responded to the concerns. As a result, the proposal has adhered to the policy called the Cochrane Telecommunications Antenna Siting Protocol, and planning recommends that a letter of should be issued. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. The same information will be coming forward to you next week for a decision on the letter. And I'm joined this evening by Rob O'Clair, the Manager of Planning Services, and we ask that you accept this information tonight and are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council, Mr. Hyman, do you have a comment right now?
Nicole, would you just take a moment to share with council co-location and what that entails, just for the benefit of the discussion?
Absolutely. So
Thank you.
The meaning of co-location is when there is a single structure or single tower where multiple providers put their antennas on a single structure instead of having multiple towers or a single tower per provider.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. I'm going to open it up to council. Councillor Wilson, do you have a question?
Thanks, Nicole. I'm just looking through Calgary's policies, just out of curiosity with what their setbacks are. It seems like 125 meters to eventual residential seems to be somewhat close. Do you happen to know what Calgary's setbacks rules are, or are setbacks taken from theirs? Or I've never asked this question on a telecom tower.
Through the chair, to answer your question, we did, when we developed the policy in 2016, we used the City of Calgary, and we also used the Federation of Canadian Municipalities as our guidelines for setting those setback distances, depending on the tower height.
And that's how we got to that 100 in this case? Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Seeing that there's no other questions, I do have a couple myself. Who will be benefiting, obviously, from the telecom tower, and especially if there are multiple providers? I mean, is this really to boost Sunset Ridge residents? Is it to boost Heritage Hills? I'm just trying to get a feel on that.
Yeah, to the chair, to answer your question, through the applicant, not necessarily in his written submission, as you might have read, but just in discussion with them, they're experiencing the most dropped calls both just in regular calls, but also in 911 calls in the Heritage Hills community. So that community will benefit the most, but Heartland and Sunset Ridge and Rocky View County will also benefit.
Okay, and one more question for you. I realize that obviously, even if we didn't give a letter of a support that this could go through no matter what, I guess, what is the negative effects of us providing a letter of non-concurrence of it happening on this site? Is there, I mean, obviously they can go ahead anyways, but is there any other thing that council needs to know about that end result?
To the chair, to answer your question, when providing a letter of concurrence or non-concurrence, you have to detail why you're providing that letter of non-concurrence or concurrence. And in this case, because they were able to follow our protocol and meet our setbacks, a number of other sites were looked at and the setbacks could not have been met. So that's one of the major reasons why this site was the preferred option that went forward. If we were to provide a letter of non-concurrence, we'd have to explain why it didn't concur with our protocols. And at this point, they were able to follow them, so.
Okay, so it looks like we probably don't have necessarily much of an argument to do a non-concurrence letter. Council, any other questions at this point? Did you receive all the information that you need to receive on your end, Ms. Holmes?
Yes,
Perfect, thank you. I guess we will see you next week, December 8th.
thank you.
And with that, I would like to move to item 5B and invite Ms. Ambrose, Director of Parks and Active Living. She's going to be with us for a good chunk of the meeting tonight. So Ms. Ambrose, we'll let you get started on your first item here, which is about the Cochrane Lions funding request.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Council. Tonight I am bringing forward the Cochrane Lions one-time capital funding request. This request is directly connected to the work that we've been doing for the long-term agreement, and it reflects the priority life cycle items that need attention in the near term. What I want to do tonight is walk you through what the Lions are asking for, what administration has reviewed and validated, and how it fits into the broader stewardship of the site. As Council knows, the Cochrane Lions maintain and operate the Lions Event Center and Rodeo Grounds. Earlier this year, as part of the building the 50-year agreement, the Lions commissioned a third-party reserve fund study. That study outlines the long-term life cycle needs for the site and for the facility. The request you're seeing tonight focuses on the near-term priorities identified in that work, items that support safety, accessibility, and improved user experience for the community. What the Lions are bringing forward is a request for a one-time capital funding to address near-term priorities identified in the reserve fund study, a total request of $131,750. These are the foundational items. They relate to safety, accessibility, and core life cycle work that ensures the site remains usable and functional for the community. To put the request into perspective, the reserve fund study identified approximately $406,000 in essential work over the next 5 years. So the request before you tonight represents a portion of that larger picture. It reflects the work that is considered most urgent to support safe operation and public access in the short term. The intent here is to focus on the pieces that keep everything aligned with the community, the expectations, and the recreational event spaces, while recognizing that there is a broader 30-year life cycle strategy ahead. Once the Lions request came forward, we completed a coordinated internal review with facilities, parks, fire services, safety codes, and engineering. The purpose of that review was to understand which items relate to safety, liability, mitigation, and accessibility, and which falls into the more general life cycle versus the user experience improvements. Through that assessment, we confirmed that a portion of the request addressed essential near-term needs that support safe and continued public use on the site. That portion totals approximately $84,250. Tonight's presentation is intended to give council clarity on the scope of the request and the results of the administration's initial review. Any direction or decision will come forward at regular council on December 8th. And at that meeting, council will be presented with both options, the option to fund the full amount requested by the Lions, and the option to fund only the essential items identified through administration's review. We will also continue working closely with the Cochrane Lions as a long-term agreement work progresses, and that is a big part of tonight's conversation. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have on this topic.
I will open it up to council. Council, any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Could you, hi Michelle, could you comment on there's 50,000 between the Lions request and the 85 that we came up with internally? Can you comment on the 50,000, what things are involved in that number?
For sure. So through the chair to Councillor Wilson, when we did our internal audit, there were a couple of items that were identified as accessibility features that the Lions had identified. The elevator, I believe, is one of them. And so through the safety codes, it only if you're doing renovations is it a requirement, but currently the building meets code. So only if the building is being renovated would that be a required addition. So there were things like that throughout the report that we identified as it currently meets safety code, but if the Lions chose to renovate the facility, then yes, that would be a requirement that they would need to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Nagel.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested in supporting the good work being done on the site and the community facility. I'm just wondering what the impact of this is going to be on our budget. Will it come directly from reserves, or is it tax supported, or what was the plan?
Through the chair to mayor, it would actually be coming from reserves, so it's not included in the budget.
Okay, all right. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald.
I've been in the Lions Club many times, but I'm embarrassed to say I can't visualize whether there is a lift right now. So the 35,000 for the accessibility lift, is that going from nothing to something or enhancing what's already there?
Through the chair to Councillor McDonald, so there is not currently a lift. The upstairs portion has a fairly steep ramp, and that is currently what is used for wheelchair users. However, there is no lift. So that is the request.
I see. Okay.
See no other questions. I do have a question of my own. The 84,000 and some odd change that was deemed as essential. I'm just curious, because it's not in our current budget, right? why wasn't it placed in the current budget of items that needed to be done just from a capital lens? Because regardless of what the Lions are suggesting, that would be an essential item that needed to be completed anyways?
To the chair, that's a great question. So a lot of the items that were identified are some of the ball diamond items. And we had chose to hold and wait to see what was happening with the agreement, knowing that we were gonna have this conversation as well. So we were wanting to make sure administratively that we had a full understanding of what direction council wanted us to go before we started building in additional expenses to the ball diamonds on the site. So that would be one example of why. The rest of the items are identified. If you took a look at the internal report, there are a couple of things in here where we've identified as administration that we would take it on ourselves. The parking lot is one of them, the drainage system in there, we had Civil Lands come in. So there are pieces that we're kind of pulling it all together. But it is not a site that we've gone and done a full walkthrough like we did previously with this audit.
Okay, yeah, that makes it a little bit of a different situation, because I think obviously if we're seeing items that needed to be done anyways, regardless of what happens with the funding agreement, that would have to be remediated anyways. But I'll turn it over to my colleagues for more comments. Mayor Nagel.
Yeah, my question is if, when council's asked to make a decision on this funding amount, will there be an opportunity for the club to explain their position on some of the matters? I'm really interested in hearing the pitch for some of the stuff that's been deemed as non-essential, as to why they might feel it is essential, I imagine.
Through the chair to the mayor, I can make sure that the report elaborates more on that, and if the Lions approve it, I can share the report with you as well. They have a very full, in-depth, detailed engineered report, but we can definitely also allow questions and answers on the 8th.
Has there been a conversation about a potential delegation where they would actually speak to the item? Or is that something that is an opportunity that's been declined? Or what has been the process thus far?
Because of the agreement process, we chose to bring it into committee of the whole through administration to speed up the process. So typically there'd be a delegation and then administration would come back. And so we recognized that we're also in agreement conversations. So we wanted to make sure that we were keeping the process flowing so that we had the conversations at the same time. So that's why there's no delegation coming forward for this request.
Was there an interest expressed from the organization to come as a delegation to explain their funding request?
When we talked about it, we collectively decided that this was probably the quickest way to get through it. But the Lions are here, so if you would like them to answer any of the specifics, I'm sure you could do that.
Thoughts from the chair?
I am fine if a member of the Lions wants to come up and do a quick five-minute speech on to why the non-essential should be included.
Any particular questions, or would you like me just to go through the speech?
Maybe you just introduce yourself so
My
everybody
name is
knows.
Trent Lannenweber. I'm a proud member of Cochrane for many years, and a proud member of the Lions, as well as I don't think I know everyone of you. So
I guess maybe the biggest question is the reason of the non-essential items being included. Could you give us kind of an idea of why they've been included in this?
sure. So essential versus non-essential is a very interesting word. Our engineer that we hired third party, we had no idea what he was going to come back at. We did not prompt him. We just said, this is what's happening. He came back and he marked those. He didn't use the word essential versus non-essential. He used different terms. And then we left it to the town to figure out whether we need a lift, because it's our #1 complaint by senior citizens of not happening, and we're not going to be able to afford that in the near term. Everything else I put in there was, in my view, was safety when I went through his report, and the things that aren't included in the town that are included in our funding request. Just the difference of that $50,000. I believe I agree with Ms. Ambrose. Most of it was the lift, was $32,000, I think, off the top of my head. Was the biggest piece, was accessibility, and not just the lift, but also when when you hit those buttons on the door, they automatically open, all that accessibility things. Again, #1 thing requested in the Lions, besides cleaner bathrooms. So those are what we need to get in there eventually, because we have to listen to our clients, which is our citizens. The other amount off the top of my head included things as floor covering for over top of asbestos style We've done most of them, but the engineer identified that there's still some asbestos tiles in there that we should not get rid of. That's not the right way to do it, but to put cover over top. And we found that for safety, I'm not an expert in that area, I just go by what the engineer said and then what the city or the town told us to do. So either one might be essential or not essential. When I went through the reserve fund and I identified each one that I felt based on our experience of running the place as well as the engineer, that's what we came up with, was 132,000, purely going by his number, reducing it actually, we reduced it. The dugouts we can do cheaper than he said, so we reduced that amount. And that was where we came up with that 130-some thousand.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There was a number of items that you were looking to be able to just use either members or people that you know to remediate some of the issues on your own, which is appreciative. Can you remind council of the total amount if you didn't have that, if you didn't have people who were going to do the work for you, what that ask would have been?
So the total amount is over $400,000 that the town should be doing over this next 4 or 5 years. We can't get it together enough volunteers taking out of our day to get it done, this immediate need, and taking on the liability of the ball diamonds without doing this. So you can imagine yourself and your own businesses taking this on, and then an engineer's report, I hand you an engineer's report to say it's defunct. And there is literally, for example, on the South Diamond, it's an old security fence that actually points for the barbed wire is pointed towards the field. So if somebody does a diving catch, now personally on our team, we have Al and we're okay with him diving into that, but you know, there's a lot of people that are good at ball and we shouldn't actually have those kind of things, and we need to remediate that with soft padding, etc. As well as the landscaping underneath the fence needs to be fixed so your feet can't get caught. So that's where a lot of that came. We can't take that liability in. We weren't gonna come for a funding request, but when we had that, as well as the engineer report saying accessibility, his official report and then his verbal comments were saying we could be liable. So if there's something that happens and we don't have that availability, although we might be in code, depending what a renovation is, whether a renovation includes doing new floors or not, accessibility is getting stronger and stronger in the world. We left it up to the town to decide. They said that no, we'd be liability fine. We may not agree, but again, I'm not an expert in that area.
Thanks for the explanation. One more quick question and then I'll open up to council. Ms. Ambrose, when's the last time we did renovations on those diamonds on behalf of the town?
To the chair, I'd have to get that information. I don't actually have it with me this evening.
Fair to say it's been a number of years, though, that we've actually done any work on it?
Yes, that would be correct. Yeah, the first life cycle project that we've done in a number of years have been the Ball Diamond Shale. And so that started last year. And so that's been really like the first time that we've really started life cycling any of the ball diamonds.
Okay, thank you. I will open up to council. Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, my question might actually land best with administration, but on the ball diamond. So it's 32,000 for the ball fence safety work and 38,000 for the dugout replacements, and these were the Lions numbers with some sweat and talent equity in there. So my question is, how many years could we get away with it as is? Because one of the options on the table, of course, that council is looking at is whether to move ahead with Horse Creek Sports Park. And the underlying promise to Ball is we're not going to take away the baseball site on the rodeo grounds until we can replace it for you elsewhere. And the idea was Horse Creek Sports Park. So, but if council moves ahead with Horse Creek Sports Park and putting those ball diamonds in place, then investing $70,000 in a ball diamond that we might not need in 2 years, it just seems to be a timing question for me. Because if we can get away with these for a year or two, I'd like to be able to consider whether we should then invest the $70,000 or more into the Horse Creek Sports Park and get brand new diamonds that have been built and aren't being retrofit. So I guess that's my question to administration is, could we hold off on those two investments a year or two until we know what we're going to do with the Horse Creek Sports Park ball diamonds?
So through the chair to Councillor McFadden, I think my first answer would be there's no timing on liability, on potential liability. And so there were a number of things that were identified, as Trent mentioned, the tops of the fences. We would have been looking at them, like if this agreement had not kind of come forward, the parks team, we would have been looking at them from a life cycling perspective in the next couple of years. So I don't have an exact timing on like how long are we good for, but it was definitely on our radar as a potential safety issue. Inside of the agreement, we have up to 5 years, or when Horse Creek Sports Park comes online. So there is that as well. We could potentially, and so I think if inside of this internal administrative report that was part of the report here, we did kind of say here that it is essential, but with a refined scope. And so what we were saying in that was that we could be supporting that to also bring down that price. So there's a couple of moving parts in the request specific to the ball diamonds where we could be looking at making it safer. But there is a liability question mark really essentially on if or when that happens.
Do we have a timeline? Are the Greystone ball diamonds going to be open next year?
That's a great question. Yeah, the Greystone ball diamonds will be open next year. However, it does look like they may not be open until towards the end of the ball season. So the ball season for the minors finishes in June, but we're looking at probably like end of June, early July.
Before that's ready to go, okay. Because that's where I'm trying to balance. It's like $70,000 is a lot of money.
It's
Right?
true.
And so if we're going to build the newer, better, best thing at Horse Creek Road or Horse Creek Sports Park, I'm leery about investing $70,000 in something we might be replacing in 5 or 8 years as we look to what else might be happening on the Fifth Avenue site. So that's just my thoughts. So thank you for the clarity on where we're at risk-wise with those parts of the facility. Thank you.
Just one moment. Ms. Ambrose, can you comment also, I believe the Lions intend to utilize and keep the ball diamonds in long-term over the, I think that's an important part for council to understand. I appreciate the history where originally with the town owning them that we would look to go to Horse Creek and redevelop that, but my understanding of the agreement, and certainly I haven't been as involved more recently, but I think we should comment on that just for clarity.
Yeah, for sure. So the inside of the agreement, it's up to 5 years or until Horse Creek becomes playable. But also inside of the agreement is the intent of like if there is a community need, the Lions would keep the ball diamonds. So, but that wouldn't be evaluated until closer to that 5-year mark. So there is intention of making sure that the entire site is providing community benefit.
Well, yeah, and I do appreciate that clarity then, because I had understood it was up to 5 years until Horse Creek's ready, and then on to the next adventure for the lands. But what I'm seeing here is that ball could have a permanent home that's not going to be leaving with any change. Okay.
Yeah, so the intention in the 5-year term is so that the allocation and the rental rates and things like that would remain the same as what the groups are currently receiving through the town, so that there's no change in service level until there's more of an official handoff after that 5 years. So after 5 years, the Lions may evaluate and determine that they want to change allocation or they want to change their rental rate, and that's where the adjustment would happen with the ball diamonds.
Okay. No, I appreciate that clarity then, because like I said, $70,000 is a lot of dollars. I want to make we're investing taxpayer money wisely. So a 5-year investment wasn't looking so wise, but if it's a long-term future vision as part of the site, then that's a different part of the equation. So thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and just from a risk liability assessment, I think there's more risk in not making these improvements in terms of cost.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gill?
We kind of touched on this. I'd just like to quickly go back to the accessibility lift and what's actually considered a renovation. What would happen if we did the stairs and maybe the floors or something, and then that changed and all of a sudden you guys required a lift? What would happen in that case? And is there a way we could find out what that threshold is, or if there's a criteria that actually is considered renovation versus just whatever, an upgrade?
I sure can. So there's two pieces to that. I think I heard two questions through the councillor to Councillor Gill. One is, can you find out what the actual definition of an upgrade? Yeah, we probably can do that. There's a second piece of that question, which I heard anyway, is would it prevent us from doing that upgrade? And what will accessibility look like? if it's your grandpa trying to get in and can't. Right now, yes, we have a ramp that is absolutely, we make it clear with every rental, not allowed to be used for wheelchair, as it's not wheelchair approved, it's too steep. Do people do it? Yeah, because it's there and we rented it out, so they actually use it, and then they have two people pulling somebody up, literally this steep ramp. It's dangerous, and that's a problem. So it was identified in the report, and that's why they deemed it needed, if that helps. But I can find that information out and get that through yourself.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Gale, I believe our safety codes department would have the best answer for that. So they were the one who identified that unless there is what is classified through the code a renovation, the current state of the building is like for the accessibility lift. But they did identify like the door openers, that like, yes, that needs to happen from an accessibility perspective, because so there is just different thresholds inside of the safety code, so I can definitely make sure that I'm getting that information and sharing it with council.
Okay, I'd just like to know, just in general, what's considered a renovation and what's not. I think that'd be really helpful. So that's all from me. Thanks.
Mayor Nagle?
Yeah, I just want to say, based on everything I'm hearing, I think we'd be mistaken not to support this lift. We're trying to build a really excellent community facility in partnership with the Lions. And if we're doing that, then it needs to be accessible by everyone. And they're even telling us as such. So I think we should look at that when it comes back.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I can underscore that. I mean, didn't you just accept the age-friendly award? So this lines up with everything we've been saying.
Councillor McDonald?
And I just want to pile on top of that. Certainly our aging Cochranites will use this more and more, but there's plenty of Cochranites who have mobility devices and mobility challenges of all ages that would use that and deserve to have full access to whatever community event is happening.
I only have one last question. When it comes to insurance, and if there was a claim that happened, and if we didn't do the upgrades, who takes on the liability? Obviously, I understand that with, potential lease agreement, but really, if something happens at the center, I mean, right now, so somebody's grandparent unfortunately doesn't make it up the ramp, are the Lions then liable? And with the ball, the way it currently is the town then liable?
I can take it. So to the chair, the current lease outlines the event center and the rodeo grounds under the Lions. So the Lions hold insurance, but ultimately the town owns the building and owns the land. For the Ball Diamonds, the town owns the infrastructure and the land, if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, I think it paints a very clear picture. Take everything else off the table. This is town-owned property, and the town needs to cover their own liability. So I think it probably makes things very clear in my mind as to how we need to proceed. But council, any other questions? Ms. Ambrose, you got what you needed for the funding aspect of it?
Yes, I will be bringing back a recommendation next week.
Perfect. I know you're not going anywhere. Maybe neither is Trent at this point. But we are going to move on to 5C and talk about the Lions agreement update. Ms. Ambrose, can you carry on?
All right. So for this next one, I'll be walking you through the progress administration has made negotiating the 50-year agreement with the Cochrane Lions based on the direction council provided in March. This is an information and alignment presentation. Administration will be returning to regular council on December 8th, where we will be requesting council's direction. And tonight is your opportunity to ask questions and signal any areas of where you would like further refinement before the agreement or additional work before recommendations to enter into the next phases of this. So before I walk council and the public into the details of the negotiations, I want to start by grounding the conversation in the context of where this work began. The next slides are drawn directly from the presentation that the Cochrane Lions shared with council earlier this year. We've included their slides exactly as presented, not restated. We're not restating their position, but we want to acknowledge the information that council considered when directing administration to enter into negotiations. At that time, the Lions spoke to the pressures they were experiencing at the site, their banquet facility operating at capacity, significant growth in rodeo attendance, and increased demand from groups such as Boys and Girls Club. They expressed their long-standing commitment to the community and identified a need for clarity around the long-term future of the site. The Lions also outlined the scale of the impact they have in our community. They shared that their events contribute hundreds of thousands of dollars each year to Cochrane's local economy, with the potential of even greater growth. They invest more than $150,000 annually back into community organizations and contribute over 4,000 volunteer hours every year. They also provide space and support for small businesses, youth programs, community events, and recreation opportunities that bring residents together. Their history, their volunteerism, and their role as community builders are a big part of why the previous council chose to explore a long-term agreement. And that legacy remains central as we move through the conversation this evening. In their presentation earlier this year, the Cochrane Lions also shared a long-term vision for what this site could become. These concepts reflect their aspirations to create a broader community hub that could support events, recreation, youth programming, and gathering spaces. They even referenced the idea of something like a BMO Center too, a space that could honor Cochrane's Western heritage while maintaining future community needs. While these ideas were conceptual only and not adopted by the town, they signaled to council that the Lions were thinking well beyond their current footprint and were looking for stability to explore long-term planning. This vision helped inform council's decision to direct administration to negotiate a structured agreement. Before we move into the details, I want to close this section by returning to the message the Lions brought forward when this process began. Earlier this year, when they requested the 50-year community partnership agreement, their intention was rooted in the same values they have demonstrated for more than 6 decades. A desire to grow with Cochrane, to create accessible public spaces, to support local programs, and to continue contributing to the economic and cultural life of our community. Their presentation spoke to legacy, stewardship, and volunteerism, and it outlined how they envisioned their role evolving over time. As we walk through the negotiated components tonight, it's important that council and the public understand the foundation from which this work began and the long-standing commitment that has shaped the conversations to this point. So on March 24th, council provided administration with clear direction. Extend the current lease with the Cochrane Lions Club until December 31st, 2025, and bring forward a negotiated 50-year agreement for council's consideration by the end of this year. Everything you'll see tonight flows directly from that motion. Over the past several months, administration has worked within that mandate, engaging the Lions, reviewing the site, and building the framework for a long-term community partnership with council to evaluate. These next few slides will walk through the steps that occurred following council's direction in March, so that all council and the public have a full picture of how we've arrived here. The area highlighted in pink on this slide represents the current lease footprint that the Cochrane Lions operate under. It's just under 5 acres, and it includes the rodeo grounds and the event center that many in our community are familiar with. This is a space the Lions have been using, maintaining, and programming for many years, and it forms the basis of the understanding of their current operations and the discussions council has been having. This is a slide that shows the full area of the area that we're negotiating right now. The current, it expands by 10.3 acres, moving on to 15.13 acres. It includes the baseball diamonds, open space areas, and the parking lot. This timeline reflects the key steps that were approved by council on March 24th, when the direction was given to negotiate the long-term agreement with the Cochrane Lions Club. Since that direction, we have worked through all of the milestones, and we are now here in front of you to have a public discussion. We've been establishing guidelines and principles and clear roles and responsibilities throughout the last few months, and we are now also including the benchmarks. So in March, council identified several key benchmarks that are needed to guide any long-term agreement. These were established to make sure the partnership continues to serve the public interest and to ensure that the clear checkpoints and off-ramps were defined points in the agreement. The first area of focus was public space enhancement, ensuring that over time the site continues to evolve as a community asset. One example council discussed was progress toward an improved event center. Not a specific design or building, but a clear expectation that the site should continue to advance in a way that benefits residents. The second benchmark was alignment with town plans and community input. This included work happening across several major planning processes. Council wanted to ensure that any long-term partnership supports rather than competes with the broader community priorities. The third benchmark was visible progress on the public interface, meaning the portions of the sites that residents interact with every day. Council asked that timelines be clear and deliverables be measurable so the community can see progress over time. And finally, council wanted to ensure that there is a clear plan for existing site users, including the Boys and Girls Club and our community sport groups. Part of the intent of this benchmark was to ensure that the site evolves, access to these users is not disrupted, and the space continues to function as a shared community amenity. These four components formed the foundation of the off-ramps that are built into the agreement. They provide flexibility, accountability, and the assurance that the site continues to grow in a way that reflects council's expectations and the community's long-term needs. These guiding principles have anchored the entire negotiation process. First and foremost, the land remains publicly owned, and any long-term agreement must ensure that the site continues to serve broad community benefit. From the outset, both the town and the Lions committed to a respectful and transparent working relationship grounded in communication and problem solving. We also agreed that the lands must remain inclusive and accessible for all community members with high expectations for stewardship, maintenance, and safety. Financial sustainability is another cornerstone. The Lions would continue to take responsibility for operations, maintenance, and capital costs. Any future development on the site would require to follow town bylaws, statutory plans, and established process, ensuring alignment with broader community planning. And finally, the agreement incorporates clear accountability mechanisms, regular review cycles, performance expectations, and flexible off-ramps. These principles shape every section of the draft agreement and ensured that both organizations remained aligned throughout the process. While the slide provides a high-level overview, I want to take a moment to speak to what the work represents in practice. Over the past several months, administration has worked based on the direction provided by council. A long-term structure that brings clarity to roles, responsibilities, and expectations. The intent has been to outline how the site could be stewarded over time, how public access and safety are maintained, and how communication and reporting would function so that both organizations remain aligned. The agreement also outlines how maintenance and capital planning would be approached with over a long-term horizon so the site remains safe, functional, and sustainable. Because the partnership of this scale is over multiple decades, we incorporated checkpoints and review moments that give council opportunities to look at progress, ensure alignment with community needs, and determine next steps as the site evolves. When it comes to improvements on the site, the structure follows standard municipal practice. The lands remain publicly owned, and there is clear defined future checkpoints, as discussed earlier. Council has an opportunity to review any major improvements and consider any financial implications at the time. To support the ongoing planning and community involvement, the Lions have also created the Lions Legacy Park Board, which includes representation from Glenbow Community Association, BGC, the ball groups, the Lions, and the town. This board will provide continued oversight, support long-term planning, and ensure community voices remain part of the future development of the park. One of the key commitments built into the agreement is maintaining stability for the Ball Diamond users. The Ball Diamond will remain at their current service levels for the next 5 years or until Horse Creek Sports Park becomes playable, whichever occurs first. This provides continuity for our sports groups while giving us clear transition points as new recreation infrastructure comes online. For the Boys and Girls Club, the agreement formalizes their ongoing presence on the site through a sublease with the Cochrane Lions. This gives them clarity and stability in their operations while supporting the long-standing partnership between the Lions and the club. Public access is emphasized throughout the agreement. This site must remain open, welcoming, and available for community use. It is the foundational principle built into the agreement, and it's reinforced through several parts throughout the lease. All facilities within the site are required to serve community purpose. Whether it's youth programming, recreation, culture, or community events, the expectation is that it remains as a community-serving asset. From the financial perspective, there are 3 key points council should be aware of. First, the lease rate of the full 15 acres is set to $10 per year, which is consistent with the standard nominal nonprofit rate for community-serving land. Second, the town will see a reduction of approximately $14,000 per year from the Ball Diamond revenue, as those funds will shift over to the Cochrane Lions under this new agreement. In terms of next steps, a lawyer still has the agreement and is still doing a review. Once the lawyer is completed with that, we will be handing it off to the Lions for their legal team to do the review. We need to complete a rural property report, and the Lions have requested ownership of the current event center. So there is a clear legal process for this, and administration will begin that work in early 2026, returning to council with those options. And finally, administration will return to regular council on December 8th to have further conversation on the direction council would like to go. That includes tonight's update, and the presentation provides, I'm gonna actually bring up Chris Conan, the president of Cochrane Lions, and Trent, he's our operations director for the Lions as well. So they're here to answer any questions the council may have that I'm not able to.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose. I'd just like to remind everybody here, this is not a decision-making meeting, nor should we be kind of setting the direction of voting in favor or not in favor. It's merely just an opportunity to ask the questions that need to be asked, and also to give administration some possible direction as we move ahead, just to set the expectations of tonight. Council, I'm going to open it up to questions for either the Lions or Ms. Ambrose. Councillor Wilson.
I'd be happy to start us off. I was hoping to ask a few questions to Chris and Trent, if I could, just because we have the opportunity here. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. It's been a while since we did this in front of council, and I just had a few questions about, in the same vein as we talked about our first time around when we were presenting a vision for the site, but as we move towards possible decision-making, I just thought it'd be a chance to re-ask some of these. Could I ask you to restate what the importance of the 50-year time horizon is in the agreement? I know some in opposition suppose that we could do a much shorter time frame. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity to talk to us about why that 50 years is so important to the Lions and your vision.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Wilson. The 50-year term we are seeking is more for sustainability for us and long-term planning to achieve the goals we're looking for a new event center and everything. To secure that funding, we need to show our potential investors the longevity of the site. A lot of people are looking even past 25 years. I mean, we're 8 years in the agreement of building the plan and bringing it to council. That includes finding investors at that time. Then the build starts. So to continue the service level through it all and secure investors, we need that timeline.
Right. Sorry, it was 8 years just to kind of get things even spinning. Never mind once you actually build something on the land.
And there are plans working in the back already.
Okay.
We do have a lot of stuff going behind the scenes for this in preparation for it, but they all want to see it on paper.
Okay. On a different subject, I hear a lot about the future 15 acres. There's some assertion out there that the land is too small for rodeos to continue on the site. I don't know if those pessimists are right or not. I hope they're wrong, but if it does prove to be too small for future rodeos, could you just speak to the vision outside of the rodeo itself? I know it's such a much bigger thing that you have planned for that site than some summertime rodeos. So like the year-round nature of it, perhaps the event center that you talked about. We already have the Lions Event Center, but whatever the next building might be, just maybe to hit on the future vision a little bit more.
The future vision is to make that a year-round multi-use site. Yes, there's a rodeo grounds down there. That doesn't mean that they're strictly used for a rodeo. It can be used for all kinds of different events. Amphitheaters are one that come to mind. There's a lot of winter programming that can take place around it. Yes, the infrastructure is there, however, we envision it to be much more community-minded and year-round. As far as fitting stuff down there, there's a lot of creative ways to maximize space use that we haven't even started to show the town, so.
Fair to say that you disagree with the pessimists on the rodeo assertion, that it is large enough to hold rodeos going into the future? We obviously do it right now, but.
Correct, yes, and it's only growing. The community support around it's amazing, but again, we aren't just a rodeo club, we're a community organization, and we want to keep that a community-minded site with an event that, as was stated in the presentation, brings in close to $1 million in economic impact in one weekend for the community, and we only plan on growing that.
Okay, thank you. Finally, I ran for council the first time in 2017, and the talk was what should become of the Fifth Avenue lands way back then. And my thought was always, can this not be Cochrane's version of the Calgary Stampede, an event grounds? Could we not utilize it in that vein? Is that the way your group looks at it too? Are we modeling ourselves off a Calgary Stampede sort of model, or is this totally different?
I'd be lying if I said we hadn't had negotiations with the Stampede and some consultation with them. They've proven how to do this in the middle of a community and make it a multi-use site. Yes, they have a 10-day event that's a rodeo, and they've proven that you can use community space for anything and everything else. So it is part of the long-term plan, but we want to make sure that it's not just, the mini Stampede grounds. We want to make it our own identity and make sure that it's serving every purpose it needs to.
Okay, well, thanks very much. Thanks for being here. I again reiterate that I feel lucky and blessed that we have a group such as yours willing to step forward and make the site into something so much more than it currently is. And I appreciate you guys being here tonight to speak to it.
Mayor Nagel.
Yeah, happy to be here having this conversation this evening. Similar to Councillor Wilson, I've been talking about this since I first ran for council 12 years ago. I've talked about it in every single election and always heard really great feedback from the community whenever I've brought it up. Also similar to Councillor Wilson, what he was alluding to, and I want to just ask more questions about to really drive it home, because I feel one of the great misconceptions out in the community for those who may be asking some questions about whether or not we should do this, the misconception is that this is just about the rodeo. And I know it's about much, much more. So the question I have to you is, can you speak to how many different events in your ideal scenario in 5 to 10 years this facility could be hosting? Is it one every single weekend, two every single weekend? Or what are you guys envisioning?
As many as we can. We want to see that place used all the time for whatever community group. The event center is over 100% utilization. We are turning that over the same time, or in the same day, multiple times for multiple groups. BGC, I'll speak to that one. Through the winter, through the summers when the weather's not amicable, we allow them the space to put the kids inside so the kids never lose out on their freedom of running around on there as well. And we want to continue that for anything outside on the park. If the Ball Diamonds aren't busy, let's find somebody else that can make use of the space. Anything can happen down there. We want to see it busy all the time. Yep.
Sorry.
I'll add to that, Mayor. When I got asked to take on the event center, my background is running and turning around companies. And when I'm asked to run and take over a company, it's usually financial minded. And so that was the fear of the Lions, that I would take the event center and turn it into a financial minded. And I had to reprogram my brain not to do that, because that is how I run. And my the success criteria, if you look at KPMIs on the event center as well as those grounds, was utilization. So start for it to pay for itself and utilization. So in the year and a half or 2 years now that I've ran it, we've gone from a 20% utilization up to 110% utilization. The grounds themselves are down to about a 5%. We estimate them down to a 60% this first year. Our friends from the West have planned to do their rodeo nationals there, as well as having a TP village there. We're partnering with, for example, the Humane Society to have more events there and looking at markets. Just as examples, so you can have realistic examples of what we're looking at. So if you look at success criteria, it's not financial for us this time. It is utilization and diverse utilization for the community.
And through the chair, if I continue asking a couple more questions. I've seen your group operate over the years delivering the rodeo, and I have no doubt in my mind that the dedication and passion of the group is able to deliver upon the vision you've set forwards. One of the questions that I have heard from the community, and I have myself, is whether or not the capacity is going to be there to raise the capital to execute on the vision that you have in mind. Are you able to speak to your club's initial indication as to if this agreement, or when it's locked in, how you'll be able to raise capital to support the vision?
Raising capital is something that Chris is all about. But as far as the vision on how to do it, yes, the first piece of that is 50 years. So when I approached the co-op well before they built in Greystone, I happened to be good friends with the VP that built that place. I approached them and said, what would it take to get naming rights down there? Because that's the first thing on getting funding. And call it, instead of the BMO Center, let's call it the Co-op Center, just as an example. And his first words were, well, how long a lease do you have? And when I gave him, he goes, talk to me when you have at least 30. So that's the first initial step. So we can't get comment really on our funding strategy yet, other than the fact that we know what we need to start those conversations with corporations. And we don't think it's going to be a major issue, as well as probably, you know, some funding from banks, et cetera, and hence the ownership of the building, although we never will own the land. We don't want to, but to show the fact that we can own and manage assets.
Okay, all right. I'll turn it over to the rest of the group for now.
Councillor Singh.
I want to say thank you to the Lions Club for your many decades of volunteerism and your continued support of the community events like Pancake Breakfast, which I thoroughly enjoyed doing flipping pancakes, and other initiatives we all enjoy. My question is, as the site evolves and major infrastructure is considered, such as community hub or event center, how will council and public be involved in reviewing those future proposals before any construction or commitment move forward?
So we've structured this in a 50-year lease, and that is a 50-year lease with an extension of 25 if we both agree. But truly what it is it's a 50-year lease with stage gate at 2 years and stage gate at 8 years. 2 years to get the land use designation proper up to speed, which we should do anyway, even if this lease didn't go, because it's not proper right now. And that has full public consultation, as well as we continue to do our own throughout it. The second is the 8-year piece, which we have to take back to council. And the first thing council's gonna do, well, Tara, Marnie drilled us on this, have we done public consultation? So the whole point is, how do we get ahead of that? We create a community liaison position that advises that board that Michelle or Ms. Ambrose talked about. And there's a community liaison position that's coming out and advising that board what the community needs. Because there's no sense for us coming back here unless it aligns perfectly with what us who live in the community wants to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. If I may ask another. The agreement outlines for 3 to 5 years for BGC and the Ball Diamond. Given the Cochrane growing population and increasing demand for recreational youth programming, do you feel that 3 to 5 year transitional period is sufficient? And specifically for BGC, how will we ensure that their space and usage needs continue to meet the community needs expanded over the time?
That's as the mayor said, there's some misconceptions out there, and I would suggest that's a misconception. The 5 year for the Ball Diamond is purely 5 year to lock in the rate they're paying and the percentage that the adult teams versus the kid teams versus the mixed teams get. So men's, mixed, they have a certain allocation percentage that the town have worked out with them because it's a big hot spot, I guess. The 5 year locks that in that we can't change that percentage. So if the men's team all of a sudden grows a whole bunch and says they want to pay more, we can't accept that for 5 years. That's all the 5 years does, and it guarantees them for us never even to look at it. What's in there and what's missed, and everyone says, and based on community need, and you'll notice that the ball clubs sit on our board. There's no requirement for us to yank those ball diamonds out. In fact, if you look at the original presentation that Mr. Copperthorne did, the ball diamonds are still in there for 50 years. Based on community growth, when I was doing my rough calculations in 5 years, I think we're actually, even with the ball diamonds, we're ball diamond per capita, I'd be very interested to see whether we're behind what we were when I moved here, and I'm pretty sure we are, even with the new diamonds in Greystone and Horse Creek. According to the ball board member that we have, Ms. Howe, she very much doubts that those will ever not get used. We're looking, actually, our initial pricing is pricing for lights to make them a 24-hour ball diamond. But then we have to consult with another board member that's on there, our neighbors, lighting that community up. We don't want to do that. So that's the discussion and look, if that helps.
Sure.
And, oh, sorry, in the Boys and Girls
BGC,
Club,
yeah.
there's no 5-year in there, that's forever.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for everything the whole board does. Thank you.
Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to first say thank you to the Lions. Ever since I moved here in 2003, the Lions Rodeo has kind of been part of our annual thing we do. I don't make it there every year, but yeah, it's one of the keynote events that makes Cochrane unique. So thank you to all the Lions who've always participated in making that happen. And so this conversation is exciting to me. I think most folks know that finding recreation solutions has been a big priority of mine for a number of years. And I really see this partnership and other partnerships that we need to find are a big part of how our community can meet our parks, recreation, and cultural needs. We've been doing a lot of conversations recently about the municipal financial limitations, and we're gonna have to find innovative and different ways to meet those needs. So I'm excited about that. When we're talking about this site, and certainly what's interested me a lot about your proposal is that, yes, it is more than just a rodeo, because it is meeting so many of those needs. I mean, I've been at the Lions event site. I did a boxing match there and got punched in the head a bunch of times, so that's always memorable. But yeah, and the Boys and Girls Club having a future there is always super important. So it's a site that's more than just the rodeo. And I am one of the skeptics when this says, we want this to be Cochrane Stampede Ground, because this is 15 acres, that's 200 plus acres. So I think there can always be rodeo, but I remember when we were doing the tri-site, it was more of a rodeo in a box vision, and it's not all about the rodeo, it's about the different events. So can you gentlemen speak to me about kind of that balanced vision of it being more than just the rodeo, I guess?
Yeah, so of course, rodeo, big event in town, but we are trying to, the Stampedes, who I keep going back to because they show how you can maximize the usage of a site. It is a rodeo in a box, but the community programming part of that, we're there to we want to educate as well about Cochrane's traditions, the Western heritage of the town, but we also want to show that we're growing with the town. It's meant to be educational. As far as continuing to use the grounds, I mean, the sky's the limit to multi-purpose it, honestly.
Yeah. And that's the language that really resonates with me, is that multi-purpose of it. One of the conversations I had today was like, this is kind of Cochrane Central Park, but of course only in Alberta does our Central Park include a rodeo, so that's pretty cool. But as this discussion has come about, my inbox, my voicemails, messages from lots of folks in the community is, hey, we value this site as well. There was the tri-site plan, we've been a part of that. We want to have a say in being able to, can we have a public hearing? Can we engage with this more? I think even in our conversation today, I've learned some things that have helped settle some of my concerns. But I don't want to replicate some past decision-making when it comes to lands and community sites that people value. I want to make sure that we're making this decision in a way that ensures that the Lions is truly valued. Like, I don't want to set groups against each other. I want to make sure that this is seen as a win and a collaboration and some transparency. So one of the things we had with staff is like, maybe we could have a non-statutory public hearing. I understand there's some limitations on that. Certainly kudos to you for establishing your legacy group to engage with your neighbors and other partners there. But yeah, how open would you be for us to kind of expanding the public engagement a little bit more so that more folks can share their vision, and for you folks to be able to answer questions and maybe satisfy some curiosity about the site?
Very open. After the 50-year lease is signed, very open. And the reason I say it that way is because we got to get going on it. The Tri-Sites plan is 8 years old now?
Probably, yeah.
And none of it's truly been executed. And in our 50-year lease, the reason I state that isn't to knock on the Tri-Site plan, quite the opposite, is to do exactly what you're saying, sign the 50-year lease, change to from CS to DC, land control, and then we have our second stage gate, don't forget, is 8 years, where we have to come back. And not only do we have to do the tri-site plan, which is all fun to do, but we actually have to have funding, to your point. We actually have to show the fact that we've worked with the town admin to show exactly what it's gonna cost council too, so they can get it in their budget, et cetera, so we can execute on it. And at that point in time in 8 years, and that's maximum we have. Don't forget, the lease lease is determined that we have it within the 8 years. Our goal is 6. So with that, we have to have it done by then. And it takes time to get all of those groups together, hence the community liaison position that's gonna be reporting right into the board. To put that in, once we have all of that, we have a very good idea, and then we can do any consultation you guys wanna do, because we've already done it, is our point. You will always have naysayers that wanna sell the land to save a few dollars on tax. I don't agree to your analogy of New York selling Central Park either.
Yeah, I'm very much against that one.
Yeah.
Both
so-
for New York and for us.
Yeah, so we don't agree with that, but how do we move forward? Well, we can say we haven't, so this is our next stage 2, and we put very clear markers in the lease to say we have to or we're out, to put it bluntly. We have 2 major stage gates to get through. One is a land use, which we'd have to do anyway to continue on doing what we're doing, just to catch up on the way life has changed in Cochrane. And then the second is to come back to council with what that looks like. And that's gonna take, my estimate is 6 years, so we put 8 on the lease, in case I'm wrong.
Yeah, those are my questions for now. I'll throw over to my colleagues, but I know this is a topic that has really broad community interest. I'm just trying to make sure that we're balancing off those needs and that transparency, engagement, making sure. One of my philosophies always has been we make the best decision when the community's engaged. So just trying to find the best tool to make sure that happens.
Councillor McDonald.
I think it needs to be said that community engagement before a 50-year lease versus after we've signed a 50-year lease will feel very, very different to various community members and community groups. But we'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to talk about language that I also really appreciate. I went back and watched the February presentation by the Lions Club, and I wrote down a few things I loved. You said one of your guiding principles was to be a gathering place for all ages and cultures, built on pride and respect. I thought that was worth highlighting. Another quote, accessible, diverse offering for all of Cochrane to enjoy, which I've heard you advocating for tonight with the accessibility changes you want to make, and I really applaud that. Furthermore, the business development opportunities that you offer currently with the Butcher Block, I think the coffee shop has been really successful within your building, so to me that's quite remarkable. And then finally, Councillor McFadden touched on it, but I want to applaud you on the composition of that legacy board that you've created, pulling together such important stakeholders for those downtown lands. But back to the community engagement piece, as a new councillor, I was really curious what community engagement has happened so far, if there has been any conversations with the public or with other community groups, and where we sit on that, and then echoing Councillor McFadden, what mechanism exists for us to open that up?
So through the chair to Councillor McDonald, through the negotiation process, I met with all of the ball groups and BGC as the main stakeholders. We went to the Cochrane Minor Ball AGM as well, but for broader community engagement, there was no broader community engagement. There was a very focused on the stakeholders on the lands, and that was just from the direction that council had given, making sure that we were thinking about the impacts, but keeping the pathways open and that public access. So there wasn't any specific community engagement to the broader residents.
Okay. And I think we've heard it already, but I'll echo it. This is becoming a hot topic, and we're hearing a lot of diverse opinions. And as you say, we will regardless of which way this goes. And we can't please everyone, but there is a level of significance to this decision that I would love to have the opportunity to hear more opinions in front of us.
Mayor Nagle, before I go back to you, I just wanted to ask a couple questions. I think the one thing that actually has been hit on here tonight is that there are quite a few misconceptions in the community. I've heard them in my own inbox where people think that we signed this, the Lions now own the land. I think there's just so many different various opinions out there that I'm not sure how to get that through to the public as to what this actually looks like. And while I completely understand signing that 50-year lease gives you the certainty, I wasn't in the first meeting where the Lions, I really regret that decision that I was not here all of a sudden in that first meeting where you did present. I was in, I believe, the March meeting. When this was first brought up, what was your idea of signing that lease? Like, what kind of time limit did you originally have on it? Because I do know that then it became a topic, can we sign this before the election? Then that was kind of pushed off, and then it came back to the end of this year. I'm just wondering, from a time perspective, what was your original ask of council to have this lease signed and moved on to the next step?
You mean the Lions ask?
Yeah.
The Lions asked to do it in 2 months.
Okay, so 2 months, and now we're pushed out, and that was way back.
Yeah.
When?
And I'll remind the council again, not to repeat myself, but 2 years in, the lease ends if we don't do a full public consultation as well as change land use. So it's a 50-year lease, which we requested 100, 50-year lease with a 2-year stage gate for full public consultation for the land use. That's public consultation number 1. That's land use, and land use, as we well know, is what we might use it for. We have to include in that. Then a second consultation in 8 years before anything really changes. What it does give is it gives the ball club certainty, this lease. Because 2 years ago, we were sitting in town property here watching a building being erected on the North Ball Diamond. This stops that. It stops those conversations. The Lions are going to protect that area for 2 years, and then 8 years, and then 50 years. Think of it that way. And then yes, as far as other groups that might be interested in it, yeah, that's the consultation. And of course, everybody is. I'm sure BMX would love to make a track there. I'm sure everybody would. But there is a history there, and we have to respect history and what goes on there. And it's not Lions history. The Lions has one event a year, really huge, the biggest, largest event of the year. But there's a lot of other clubs that have a huge history there.
Okay, I guess maybe this question is for administration, and I'm just curious on that public engagement piece. Obviously, new provincial ruling, doesn't allow us necessarily just to have willy-nilly public hearings, and so I'm just wondering if it was council's will to have public engagement, what could that possibly look like? Do we have an idea? And also, what kind of timing? Because I understand obviously the concern of the Lions that we don't want to be pushing this off into an unknown time scope.
Yeah, through to the deputy mayor, I think there have been some changes in provincial legislation. We have a meeting tomorrow with legal, and we could explore some different options. I think council would just have to give us some direction in terms of the outcomes specifically that council is looking for around that engagement and what that would look like. And then certainly we can work collectively to report back by next week and provide council with some options.
And I also understand that the Lions have not received the lease agreement back from town legal yet. And so obviously I would think that they probably need some time to be able to do a review. I'm not really sure what this looks like, considering that we're supposed to be making a decision as of 7 days from now. But if you haven't even received the final agreement, it makes it somewhat challenging, I think, on your end. And then also for council members, because we do have 3 new members of council, their level of certainty of how they want to proceed. So I'm just trying to balance everybody's opinion around the table right now.
Deputy Mayor, I don't think I answered your second part of your question too, was the timing. I think the earliest that we could possibly have some form of public consultation would be in the new year. I think it would just be very challenging to do that in the next couple of weeks and provide people the opportunity to do the proper advertising, things of that nature. So it would likely be sometime in the new year. Preferably as early as possible, understanding the importance of this to the groups.
Okay, and so then I would also ask the Lions, how much does that impact anything on your end if that was the will of council to decide to do some public engagement?
It has a fairly financial impact to us for 2 reasons. One, as council knows, when they have a capital project, it takes some time. Lions are going to get it done by spring because you guys right now have liability on your hands on the ball diamonds. We won't take that liability on, so we're actually going to take that funding that we've previously talked about and get that fixed for you in a more efficient and probably cheaper way than you guys can do it. So that's a liability thing that you'll have to take on if you delay it. Number two is we have we start shoveling snow January 1st. We can't hire somebody in 2 hours. We need time. So therefore we have that time. We have that person starting December 15th, training, et cetera. That contract's in understanding the fact that we go forward with the lease. If we delay it, that's gone. I cancel those contracts. So we have some concerns there because in March, when council voted not to go public consultation during this piece, to do it during the land use, this is what we went in good faith under, the land use change. So yeah, we have some financial things to get under, and as far as us not seeing the lease, we worked hard on the MOU, assuming there's no material changes from the MOU, other than our legal having a bird on a few of the issues, and he will. There is we will work through those. As long as it's non-material changes, we're comfortable moving forward. If there's material changes in it, of course, then we have to come back and say, no, the Lions wouldn't sign it in the end anyway. But as long as there's no material changes on the actual legal lease once we see it, and it's aligned with the MOU, that's what I'm calling it, MOU, that we went forward with, it should be fine.
If I can provide some context as well. So prior to our legal team seeing that, the Lions legal team saw the MOU and provided context and comments, and then we sent it to our legal team. So and any sort of questions that our legal team has had, we've immediately connected with the Lions. So there shouldn't be any big surprises when we get it back, but it is still with our legal team.
Okay, I'm going to flip it back over to council. Councillor Gale.
So I have a couple questions from residents. Someone mentioned that the Stampede doesn't pay property taxes for most of their property. So what would the case be here for property taxes?
Through the chair to Councillor Gale, I would have to bring that answer back to you next week.
Okay. And one more question that was in my inbox was whether an economic benefit analysis is available to residents. I think it's just a clarity piece.
Through the chair to Councillor Gale, the Lions may want to elaborate on this, but they did provide an economic impact in February when they came forward to present. I don't know if you want to add anything else to that. It is public, and it is public. We're able to share it out.
Okay, could you possibly share that with council?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all.
Mayor Nagel.
Yeah, I just turned my light off there because I wanted to give Councillor Gale a moment to speak so I could hear what she thought before I asked my questions. So as I'm understanding it, the way that I think we should potentially be positioning this is that it's not a 50-year commitment right now. It's a 2-year commitment right now. It's like the Lions are asking us to officially date before we get married in 2 years is kind of how I'm hearing it. And I think if that is the question, I think that's much easier to digest than the 50-year question next week. Is that a fair assessment, this dating and marriage analogy that I've used?
Very much so. Very much so, Mayor Nagel. The 50-year lease gives us certainty to go out and talk, to start getting funding, et cetera, to come back in the 6 years, assuming we're successful in the 2-year. And as I've told the Lions in meetings, yes, we can all have a great celebration for the community, not for the Lions. All we're doing is taking on a lot of work. But we can have a big celebration for the community that we've protected those ball diamonds now for them. We've protected the Boys and Girls Club because they currently don't have a lease with you. So now they'll have an official lease forever with us. So we're protecting the areas of the current people that are there that have made their spot in their homes for years and years and years. In 2 years, we will be back with the land use. And that, again, you have your own policies and procedures around that. We have no choice to follow, and we want to follow them. We want to hear what needs to be in those. We have no problem with that, and that was never even a topic of negotiation with us. It wasn't a debate. And that was the whole point of the February meeting, was to say this was the procedure and this is what we're going forward with, is putting those stage gates in to protect everybody involved. What we can't do is do like the tri-site plan and come with a baked framework all at once. That's impossible. You're asking for 15 years and probably $10 million in consulting fees alone to come up with that. And that's just unrealistic based on your own budget negotiations. What we can do, though, is stage gate that throughout in a much more user-friendly way that protects everybody now, as well as show you what will happen in the future in a pragmatic way.
Yeah, so reflecting on my position, how I would like to see this move forwards, I'm personally not, just my own personal perspective is I feel ready to support this. I felt ready to support locking in with the Lions for 12 years. And I've made that point abundantly clear every time I've run in an election. And I've always felt that I've received very good feedback from the community when I've said that, be it in forums or on my websites. And it's always been something that I've just been very transparent about. So I personally have no reason that I would want to hold back. But I also believe we need to follow proper process. As has been pointed out in some conversations with people, one of the reasons I was elected is because people felt that there wasn't proper process done in the YMCA proposal. And I certainly don't want to come in here on month 2 now, and rush through a process without giving people adequate opportunity to comment. But I also don't want to make the Lions wait, because they've been waiting for too long, 6 months too long already. So I really want to find a way to figure out how to have some real meaningful public dialogue this month before we go to Christmas. One of my concerns with this Lions deal all along was that it was punted down too long, and it's like, let's just have the conversation. The whole community knows about the conversation. I don't want to get locked up in a long, lengthy process. So I would like to request from our administration more details as to why there is an opinion that we can't talk about this in December with I know there was a comment that legally we're not allowed to call it a public hearing, but why can't we call it a town hall or something like that?
Through the chair to Mayor Nagel, we're happy to explore different options, as I said, and look, if it's council's wish to try and get this. There is an advertising requirement and notification, typically 2 weeks. So, 2 weeks from today is going to be pretty much the middle of the month, and with everybody's Christmas festive period of the year, it's very challenging. Of course, our last meeting is the next Monday. That's previously been scheduled. So that's where I was saying give some opportunity if we did this in January, I think would certainly be my initial position, but I'm happy to work with my colleagues to explore some options if that's council's wish.
Any suggestions?
Going? Yeah, and it's to the credit, so it's a complicated situation because we have half the people, well, 3 out of 7 of the people who are up here weren't here 2 months ago, but the Lions Club was given a unanimous indication in March that this thing was going to be moving forwards, and now here we are up against the timeline. So we're in between a little bit of a rock and a hard place into how to handle this properly. I do believe that there's a way to get a meeting in December, and I think people are passionate about this topic that I think they'll find a way to be here if we did it on December 14th or 15th or 16th or something. Is that fair, or is that too close for your organization to try and do a public hearing in 2 weeks? Or would you actually, am I wrong, and you'd actually prefer it in January?
Well, Mayor Nagel, with everything that we have in play, I actually agree with Drew, the fact that it would be a very big challenge to get that done, to get proper out there, and that's why this is a 2-year lease extension with a 50-year runway. If we do well in the 2 years, we get to go to the next stage gate.
Okay.
And that's what we're asking for. That's what we put in there, and that's what town administration was there to protect the citizens as well as us. Making sure the fact that we're doing the right thing. We don't want to spend all of our volunteer hours. I could have a heck of a lot more consulting rates going instead of doing this. Doing this if we're going in a direction of only the 30 people around. We want to do this for the community. The Lions' motto is we serve. So therefore, it's a 2-year runway in a 50-year lease. And if that 2-year runway isn't aligned with the community, we will hear it loud and clear. We will have to change it. So no matter what you hear, in this, so let's think forward what that public consultation will look like. No, we should sell the land. Yes, we want the BMX club there. Yes, we want this. So what are you going to do? Change the whole lease in the next week after that? It can't be done. That can't be that quick. So therefore, what I'm asking for is to think through what a public consultation will give you other than a 2-year public consultation is what I'm offering and what the lease is offering, and what town admin said was best for the council as well, to align with what their original wishes were.
Yeah, and one final comment, relating it back to the YMCA deal. The reason that one really bugged people so much is because they didn't know about it until 10 days before the decision came out, and they said, whoa, where's the public consultation? This just showed up last week, and now it's happening. But this deal has been in public conversation for a very long time. This is not snuck up on Cochrane. I think that's something worth considering as well. But I'll let somebody else talk.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, so in the comparison with the Y, which wasn't where I was gonna make my comments, but in the comparison with the Y situation, what I certainly heard from the people who were speaking that night, and I certainly appreciate the 400 people that came out to passionately share their love of the facility, was, hey, I might be in favor of this, but I don't know any of the details. And I feel the same way about this agreement, that I think there'd be much more community buy-in and much less concerns if there was more details known and understood. And that's why I think the public consultation is so important, is to allow the Lions to tell their story, because I think you have good answers to a lot of the questions I've heard. So for me, the public consultation opportunities is a chance for the story to be told. And as we're sharing values about how we're coming to our decision-making processes, one of my values always has been public consultation, and public consultation in advance of a decision. So for me to stay true to that, I have to continue to advocate to have that public consultation before we sign the 50-year lease. Because even with the stage gates and the ways to manage the risk, which I appreciate in the agreement, it is still a 50-year agreement. It's not a 2-year agreement, it's a 50-year agreement. So I would ask admin to come out with, some public engagement options, and to make them as speedily and tight as possible. I want to be fair to the Lions as well, and make sure that, I don't want to take more than a quarter out of your, 2 months out of your processes is really, I think we can do a good, valid public engagement process in 2 months so that we can at least hear the community more broadly, and so that the Lions and the municipality have time to kind of, share the parts of the deal that people have questions about, the proposed deal. So that's where I'm landing on the question around consultation before or after the 50 years. I was one of the council members that voted on that in the spring, but it was always my understanding that there would be an opportunity for public consultation. So if I misunderstood that at the time, that was my error, but that was always my intent in making that decision. So that's just my feedback for admin on what I'd like to see as options when we come back to this discussion next week.
Councillor McDonald?
If we do go forward with public consultation before a decision, I would agree, let's do it as quickly as we possibly can. I really want to honor the work that's already gone into this and the commitment that you were kind of operating under the assumption of. I think that's really, really critical here. And then, I'm sorry if you've already gone over this, but please reiterate for me, when you talk about your public engagement process within those first 2 years, can you give me some more specific information about what that looks like?
So through the chair to Councillor McDonald, so the land use change inside of the lease is outlined that the town would be the applicant. So that would follow how we would publicly engage. So that is also part of what we landed on when we were negotiating the lease, with the engagement process being done through the town.
Perfect. Okay, that was going to be my follow-up question. We will be heavily involved in the public engagement for those 2 years.
Yeah, we would be through the chair to
it.
Councillor McDonald, we would be the applicant, so it means that we have to drive the engagement as
Okay.
well. And sitting on the Lions Legacy Park Board, we would make sure that we're also sharing and with all that information with the board, and then also bringing all of that information from the board back to council.
Okay, thank you.
And that also includes a public hearing at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. This is a committee of the whole. This is a committee of the whole, so we're not going to make a decision tonight. Just a question, a thought experiment question. If 1 week from now on December 8th, the 4 or more council members decide we don't want to sign off on this yet, we want to do some sort of public consultation, that happens, it sounds like maybe mid-December, but more likely early January. Let's say council then afterwards decides to sign this very agreement, that would probably be later January, it sounds like. What would be the consequences? I think I just heard them, and that would simply be that we'd lose the snow removal contract, and we'd probably lose the ball diamond improvements that your group's offering. Would that be the consequences of that scenario playing out as I just framed it?
So asking off the top of my head without thinking through, Councilor Wilson, there's financial impact to us and liability impact to that we're not sure we're willing to take on, plain and simple.
Okay.
The ball diamond liability, we're not willing to take on the way it is now. So then we put it back to the town and say, you didn't give us enough runway to get the contracts in place to take it, because if kid hurts themselves on day one, I personally am responsible for that, and I won't take that on. Not with my accounts. I don't want to be sued personally. So therefore, we will not sign the lease if it's that long and we don't have the runway. We need to protect ourselves liability. Well, I shouldn't say we will not sign it. I can't recommend to the Lions to sign it. It's up to them eventually. But I wouldn't be recommending taking that liability on, and neither, I guarantee, would our council. The second piece is we do have some very good contracts in place that we've worked all summer on getting in place with the staffing. It's not snow removal, it's staffing. So we actually have hires in place, and their lives are changing. We've worked with the Autism Society as well as Inclusion Society to put those in place. Funding requests from the government are in place to get these moving. We delay that, we're delayed, and I can't guarantee that we'll ever get them back. So there's some major impacts, actually. And I understand the want to do that now, the change in the game late in the game. But as Mayor Nagel said, this has been in front of the public eye the whole time. We've been talking about it, we've been announcing it, and we've been advertising it. And I'm not against public consultation at all. It's just the impact to us now, this late. To be fair, I just don't think it's fair to us. We took all this volunteer time on your word that this was what's happening, and on your votes that this was happening. We did what the town and us worked together on and said we would do every step of the way. We got it to the finish line. That is a very good agreement, better than we've ever had, for the citizens of Cochrane. And now we kind of feel maybe that we're gonna have to cancel all those contracts that we have all signed up. So that's pretty scary.
So in a nutshell, in that thought experiment I just offered, it could compromise the entire deal.
It might. I can't. I'm one vote of the members. It's not a dictatorship in the Lions. It's up to them. My recommendation would be to look at our liability and defer to our lawyer at that point.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm just trying to get clarity here. The argument that this has been before the public for a really long time does hold a lot of compelling evidence to me. It's something I've talked about during both the last two elections I've been involved in. I've been very clear about my position on this, but at the same time, there's been great points made about the Sports Center so-called debacle. It might have been that it just was presented too late to the public, and I'm hoping not to repeat our mistakes from that as well. So I guess just to lay out all the cards in front of council of what's on the line here on the December 8th vote, and I guess that tells us as much as we're gonna know. I suppose that's all my questions. Thank you.
Before I go to you, Mayor Nagel, I guess I was curious about that too, the financial impact of what it could all mean if it is delayed. And I do hear you loud and clear that, I mean, at this point, that proposal may not even go through depending on what the members decide. I think it would be very valuable if there was a dollar amount, just from a legal perspective. To be fair, that is definitely something council would have to take into consideration. And I don't think anybody wanted to get to this point, to be realistically, like go back months, it became an election decision that we didn't want to have, and now it feels like it's an end of the year decision that we don't have enough information on. So I understand the frustration on the club's part, so I don't want to say that I don't understand that. Mayor Nagel, any more? Last question?
Yeah, I can't promise it'll be my last question.
Okay.
Where was I going with this? I have, what I want to express is that I don't want us to leave here without providing some clarity on the steps forwards. I think we're between a rock and a hard place here, because it is peculiar for a brand new bunch of councillors, at least 3 out of 7, to come in here and have to make such a huge decision with so little information and time to consider it. We've been so preoccupied with the Alberta Municipalities Convention, our budget, appointing our new interim CAO. Like, we've been very busy the last month, and the new people up here have not had a fair chance to consider this. At the same time, the Lions are in a terrible position because they were given unanimous certainty this thing was moving forwards. And now here we are having a conversation about delaying it beyond the year. And so we need to figure out what is the path forwards that at least a majority of us sitting in this room can agree on and be clear on it in the public forum here. Because if we just leave this conversation and then on the 8th we come back, we don't know when we're doing public, we don't know when we're doing public consultation, we don't know if the Lions are willing to continue their operating through the end of the year. There's like all of a sudden a lot of questions. And I would say this is why I wish we would have resolved this before the election, but we did not, because I was afraid of this very scenario. So we need to, while we're here with everybody, even though we're on the camera and it's hard to make on the fly decisions like this, we need to have a list of everything that we need to be talking about as a group, because the lease expires at the end of the year. The decision expires at the end of the year. And how are we going to go about finishing that up if we don't sign something on the 8th? But the reality is, I completely understand why council feels they need more time. So I'm just saying right now, like, we can't just kick this down the road, because down the road's 3 weeks from now, when we're not even going, we're all going to be on holidays, which is why I'm wearing the hat. But yeah, so administration, how do you recommend, if council is not prepared to sign this thing on the 8th because of the valid concerns that have been raised about public engagement, what is the go forwards? Because I am correct, the lease expires at the end of this year, correct?
Yes, that's something that would have to be considered, is extending the lease. So we need a resolution from council in terms of extending into the new year. I appreciate the position of the Lions and the amazing work they do in the community. But again, we would have to look to extend that to give ourselves a little bit of runway. And then certainly my recommendation, once we meet as a team, I'm not looking for this to be 5 months down the road. I'd be looking at to do this in January. I just think trying to do this in 2.5 weeks with advertising and things. Again, everyone has commitments and different obligations. Is there an opportunity for those who want to prepare? Also give the Lions an opportunity to prepare whatever the engagement looks like. We need to really define that and give people an opportunity to get ready. But I would anticipate, January 15th.
So would you say, if I could, would you say the tangible set of actions would potentially be fund the capital requests, or consider funding the capital request to take care of these ongoing liabilities, maybe enter into a 3-month extension of the current lease, schedule some sort of public hearing or town hall for
Clear direction,
January
yes.
15th, something like that?
Yes.
Would those 3 executable items like be a path forwards that would?
Again,
tie up all
I
loose
can't
ends?
speak for council. I can give you recommendations, and then it's council's direction. But something of that nature, which gives us an opportunity to come back and do that engagement with a plan. Of course, that's on the premise that we come back next week with a clear plan of what that would look like. I've been working with Ms. Knight, but we're working, or excuse me, Robertson history, sorry. And I think that we can absolutely come up with a plan. It's just there have been some changes with Bill 50 in terms of the non-statutory public hearing. So we've just got to work through that. But I'm confident that we can come up with a solution that would be acceptable and meet council's outcomes that you're looking for.
Mayor Nagel, can we go to Trent? He has something he'd like to say.
I agree.
So Deputy Mayor Fedenko says, raised that she doesn't know the exact amount, so I was calculating in my head. So the first grant we got that starts December 15th and is canceled December 16th if this doesn't go forward is $62,000 for the first year of wages. So we'll add that to the funding request realistically, not to put pressure on, but we can't afford it. This is how we got it. And then when we asked about Mayor or Councillor Gale and Councillor Singh asked earlier about, do we want to use this land further and more than what it is? Yeah, how are we going to pay for that going forward? Same as we do with the event center, is to open up to everybody in the community to rent and use all that land. That's how we're going to pay for going forward, but we need that year and that grant going forward for that initial wage. In addition, I'd have to cancel the Neil Squire grant that we got for the second piece, which puts in for our board all of our governance policies and procedures that talks about exactly what you're looking for. I've received approval to start and signed off on December 15th, if this goes forward, for her to start, to pulling all of those documents together, which is better than probably any community group would ever have. So those are the financial impacts, was a 3-month grant for that person, and then the $62,000 grant for the first year for the actual maintenance operator. That's the cost on our end. That, again, I don't know how we would proceed.
Mayor Nagel?
No, I think I see a clear path forward should council decide to do community engagement. Oh. I was just saying, I think I see a clear path forwards logistically what we would do should council choose to want to do public engagement. So, okay, thanks.
Councilor McFadden?
Yeah, I just want to say we're in, like, as the mayor's been saying, we're in a rock and a hard place between, you know, public engagement and other timings. But we're also in a tight spot. This is a committee of the whole. We're just supposed to be taking information. We have to be very careful that we're not giving direction or debating, and we've been leaning a little bit heavy in that direction, myself as well. Anyhow, so just to flag that for myself as well as my colleagues, that this is a committee of the whole. We're just supposed to be taking information, not setting direction, and we've been leaning in that way a little bit. So, and I appreciate the mayor kind of providing some things that he thinks might be valuable to make Monday night's discussion a little bit more smoother and productive. One of the elements that I would recommend in that vein would be the snow clearing was recommended. And so, you know, if this is a month or two delayed, just some recommendations how the municipality could, you know, support those challenges as best as we can and what's reasonable. So, yeah, those are just my thoughts. It's really, tonight's difficult, next Monday's difficult. It's been a busy 32 days, so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor McFadden. I agree. I think we're leading into a place where it's starting to get into debate, and I think the one thing that we have to understand is that what I'd like to see from administration is if council chose to go the public engagement route, what does that exactly look like? Dates, times, everything's set up, because it's not fair to the Lions that if council does decide to go to that direction, that they have no clear understanding of what's happening. That's not fair to the organization. So I'd want it really well laid out as to what that engagement looks like, as well as from the Lions end. I understand there would be financial impact. From your end, if it did get pushed out into a new year decision, what does that financial impact look like? Obviously, you don't even know if they would sign. That's a conversation obviously within the club, but I think if there is financial impact that it did get delayed by, you know, to the end of January or early February, what are the dollars and cents attached to that? I think that becomes a decision that if council is choosing to go down that path again, then we have to decide on making sure those costs are then covered, or whatever type of solution could be remedied. I don't disagree. We're in a difficult place. We have members here who have never really seen the proposal in depth as to what the rest of council has. Now I feel like we're all in a big time crunch as it comes up to Christmas and the New Year, and we certainly aren't making any decisions tonight. So I don't know if that gives everybody direction from what I hope can come back next week. And I realize there's probably hard conversations that are going to happen with the club as well as decisions that each of us have to make personally up here. So Ms. Ambrose, do you have direction going forward from what you need from council?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Members of the Lions, anything you would like to say at this point or offer?
No, it's just, yeah, we are all volunteers. There's not a wage paid to all of us that are putting the time in on this. So it's been a long year of this already. We started out with an understanding in March. We were hoping to be a bit further along now. So just, it is a lot of personal work from our side, just so that everybody's aware.
100%, and I think we can all feel, I want to say disappointment, but likely disappointment. As well as, please know that all of us up here on this bench appreciate all the work that, not only from the volunteer hours, but the economic driver that you've been within the community. I don't want to leave without saying that. So again, let's come back December 8th and hopefully we can formalize a decision, at least one way or the other, and so everybody has some clarity. Administration, are you good?
Yes, you've provided us clear direction, and we will have a path forward should council choose that direction. Certainly, we'll be prepared for all scenarios.
Thank you. I think at this point, let's take a 10-minute break to be able to go to the washroom, allow our guests to leave if they like, and we'll All right, council, we are back in session, and at this point, I would like to invite Miss Ambrose back up for item 5D, and we will be talking about the Parks, Culture, and Active Living Master Plan update, and as well as Michael Roma will be joining from RC Strategy. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually just up here to introduce Mike, and I'm going to hand the mic over to him so that he can go through the presentation of where we're at with the master plan at this point.
Thank you, Michelle. Deputy Mayor, members of council, members of administration, thanks for having me here tonight to give you a bit of an update as to where we're at with the Parks, Culture, and Active Living Master Plan and some of the connectivity planning that we're also, we have the good fortune to work on for the town. My presentation today should take about 20 minutes, maybe slightly over 20 minutes. I want to do some introductions for council just to refresh your memory as to the team that you have working for you for this project. Talk a little bit about the phases of work that we're going through and where we're at in those phases of work and positioning the master plan. But the most important thing that I wanted to share with you tonight is our first look at what we call an amenity assessment and prioritization. And that's where we look at all of the different choices, different activity spaces that the town invests in right now. And we take a shot at telling you whether or not you have the right service levels and also what future priorities might render the most return for you if you were able to invest. And then I'll briefly touch on next steps. So in terms of introductions, I really just wanted to hopefully, I've used this term with council before, build some street credit with you to assure you that you have the right team of professionals on the job for this exercise. So the company that I work for is called RC Strategies. We're the prime consultant on this, or the lead consultant. I'm one of the project managers and also the managing partner of the firm. We work across Canada, and this is all we do. This is our bread and butter, parks, recreation, and culture planning. We do that both at strategic level, at a master plan level like we're doing right now, and also at a tactical level. We'll do feasibility studies for facilities and policy development and that kind of thing. We also have a few other members on our team. One's called Lord Cultural Resources, and we brought them in as an expert in the arts and culture sector. We're good at that subject matter, but they're better, and that's why we brought them on. We have a landscape architect called Binny, who's helping us with connectivity and also some of the parks and open space elements of our planning work. And then we also have an architect on our team called HCMA, and they've conducted some building assessments to give us a better appreciation of the kind of current state of your existing facilities in town, most of them. In terms of the phases of work that we signed up for and that you, the town agreed to, I guess, hiring us to do, really they're split into two main kind of approaches, if you will. And the first is we want to learn as much as we can about the town. And that means a bunch of research, a bunch of assessments, some of that technical work I just mentioned. And also we want to talk to the community. And we've done that. We've had a variety of different tactics that we've used. We've hammered public engagement pretty good. Once we have that understanding, we start to think about what the future could or should look like and provide some recommendations to the town for, I usually like to phrase it as enhancing the current state of parks, recreation, and culture. That's what I hope you get out of this plan. And you'll probably end up with a menu of choices that you'll end up taking some of those choices, and you may not ever get to some that we give you, but at the end of the day, if you take just one, you're in a better place. Right now, we're at the back end of collecting all that information, conducting that community engagement, and we're at a point where we call it strategic visioning or direction setting. And this assessment prioritization that I'm going to present to you today is it's one of the first outputs that we generate from all of that input that we've collected, because it does serve as a foundation for a lot of the other pieces of the master plan, which we'll be providing as well. So it's a really important piece, and I know because of discussions that council is having all the time, and there's Parks, Rec, and Culture has prevalence in Cochrane and region for sure. We know that. We would have known that even if we weren't working here, but we are paid to know that. So I think this information will probably be interesting to council in advance of seeing the draft master plan, which you get a chance to do soon too. I kind of alluded to this already in terms of the experience we've had, but I wanted to position the master plan with you. This might be old news, but in the event it's not, I just want to assure you that this plan will be based upon the kind of strategic umbrella that the town has in place already. And that starts with Envision. It includes your strategic plan. It includes new strategic plans that you'll develop as council. And then under that umbrella, you tend to have, or you do have, strategic plans that guide certain areas of service. And that's what this master plan is. It's not meant to be the final plan or the final conversation that you have about these services, for sure for your term or before any of these potential investments are made. But it's meant to set you up for the next stage of planning, which is typically called feasibility analysis. And you're familiar with that because you have something like that going on with libraries right now, and you've contemplated doing other studies related to this subject matter. So I guess the decision that you will ultimately have to make about investing in something, especially if it's a significant investment, won't end with the adoption of this plan. There'll still be another discussion you'll have, and really what happens is every kind of layer you go down in these planning hierarchies, the more detail you get and the more specifics you get to help you make hard decisions, which I know council has, because I was just privy to that last conversation. I'm not going to go through all of the stats and information we've generated, but I just wanted to let you know the types of data that we've tapped into to come to this assessment and prioritization draft that I'll show you. So we have 3 reports that we're working on. They're in draft format right now. One is called the What We Learned report, and then we have 2 What We Heard reports. The What We Learned report is about all of that research that we've done, background information. We have an assessment of your current infrastructure, geodemographic analysis of the community. We look at trends and best practices because that's what we think as experts in the area. That's what one of the main things we bring to the table. Municipalities like Cochrane. We've looked at your planning and policy that exists, not just that umbrella, but there's kind of stuff that exists below and on top and beside, and we've done all of that. And we've also studied the approach you have related to service delivery. So that informs some of this work, and then for sure our public engagement does too. We had 2 phases of public engagement so far, and you can see on the right there the different tactics and stats that we have from that public engagement, but it's significant and it's varied. In this subject matter, I personally, and I think our firm carries this too, and you might as council, I see 2 distinct bodies of input that you could receive. One is from the general public, and the other is from the organized group community that tends to be involved in volunteering to animate your facilities and spaces. Sometimes the input received is similar between those 2 groups, and sometimes it isn't, and we definitely have designed this and facilitated it in a way that we get input from the general public and from those that have, call them organized voices, or maybe even groups that present to you and so on. That's important to us, and I know it's important to you. So this was what phase 1 looked like. This is what phase 2 looked like. Phase 1 was more about kind of the general state, preferences, satisfaction, values. Phase 2 is more about priorities. So the engagement builds upon itself, and there will be a phase 3, and that'll be once we have a draft completed, we're going to go back to the public in similar ways and ask whether or not they think we've arrived where we should have based on the input that they gave. I won't guarantee that they'll all agree that we did, but I will guarantee that they'll all have had a chance to participate, for sure. And I only say that because these kinds of services, everybody has their own bias. I have my own bias. All of you have your own bias that comes from your experiences participating, what you think is a priority and what's demanded and so on. And at the end of the day, unfortunately, as municipalities, we cannot achieve you know, kind of the epitome of what everybody would like to see in parks, recreation, and culture. So, how do we address that? Well, what we think is the answer to bringing logic into play, maybe having a more holistic perspective about what's good and what's right for the community as it relates to parks, rec, and culture is we think that you need to do this service level assessment, which we've done for you. So really, the assessment has to, first off, answer the question, do we have the right complement, which is either quantity or quality of different types of activity spaces that exist in the community or that don't exist in the community? Do we have that right? And if we don't have it right, could we have more? Could we justify thinking about more? Maybe do we have too much, or should we protect, do we have it right, and should we protect the service levels that we're at right now? That has to balance community context, it has to balance community input, expectations. It's important because it gives you a chance to sort of measure your progress along the way to see if you are in fact changing or pushing the needle forward on some of these things. But a good service level assessment also has to help you with where maybe limited resources should go. And that's where I've used the term prioritization, and ours includes prioritization. So 2 steps, first service level assessment, then prioritization assessment. I'll just distinguish between 2 terms here. I think I've used these possibly already, and maybe should have distinguished between them before, but the term amenity, what I mean by amenity is an activity space. So an amenity could be an ice arena, it could be a ball diamond, it could be a swimming pool. It's where you go to participate in that certain activity, and it's the kind of space that, you know, like I said, we all have our own choices on which ones we visit and use and so on. A facility or a site is like the physical manifestation of those amenities, but it isn't, you know, a thing. It's how you make those amenities or activities actually happen in your community. And typically, like the SLS Center, I'm always amazed when I go to that facility because the number of amenities on there, even though in there every time, like I've been there probably 10 times, personal and professional, and I'm still surprised by looking around this corner and seeing another one. So that's a facility that has a bunch of amenities within it. So the ones that we looked at for this project are broken into indoor and outdoor lists. So this is the indoor list. I won't go through them all and I won't explain them all to you, but I think that should be all encompassing of things that you have, as well as things that maybe you don't have that we've identified either through our benchmarking when we've looked at other communities, or even that we've brought forward in terms of spaces we've seen communities when they have contemporary capital projects or they're looking at bringing on new amenities. We've seen some new ones that we've put on this list and measured for you. And then the same for outdoor. I wish there were numbers beside those so I could brag about how many there are, but there are quite a few for sure. So we take those amenities, we rely on all of that research and engagement information that we've generated, and we look at those amenities through some criteria that is fed from that information. And it answers that question of whether we have the right quantity and quality of certain types of amenities or activity spaces in the community. We do that through a lens of both supply and demand. So there's 4 different criteria that we look at for supply. They're listed up on the screen there. And not only are the questions that we ask when we look at those are up there, but also the places where we get data to help us answer those questions. So amenity condition, capacity, relevance or fit for purpose, which means is that amenity still relevant to a user, or was it 50 years ago and is it not anymore? And the ability to access the amenity. So those are the 4 supply criteria. These are the 4 demand criteria. So population, the amount of public support, which includes both of those 2 perspectives, the community groups and the general public. Participation, which is what we observe in the community and what we know from maybe utilization or other information we've gathered from Cochrane. And then trends. And again, like I said, I think as part of our value that we bring to this exercise and that we bring to all of our clients. Like, this is all we live and breathe, and we're very involved in the volunteer side of things, and we have an international, national, provincial, regional, territorial perspective. So the trends is something that we take pride in providing to our clients too. So what happens is we look at those amenities through the supply and demand criteria, and they get put into 3 different buckets. The first is enhance, which is amenities that have high demand and low supply. Anybody who knows about supply and demand means that means you could, in fact, have more. So enhancing could be having more of a certain amenity, or it could be improving the quality of a amenity that you have in the community. But the bottom line is you could warrant thinking about doing better in that amenity right now. Not saying you have to or should, because there is no legislation, there's no guidance from the province or the federal government or anywhere that tells you what you should have as a municipality. So it is a suggestion or maybe a door that opens for you to think about. If you had a window to invest and you wanted to invest, this is an area where you could invest right now. The next bucket is called protect, and that's where you have high demand and high supply. So before we had high demand, and low supply, so there was a gap there. High and high means we're meeting need right now, we're doing a good job. But it could mean that if we grow, which I know you are experiencing that as a community, you may still have to add, or you may still have to think about investing in that amenity, because protecting a service level means it changes as you grow too. Or, I mean, if you were to shrink, the same would be said, it could shrink. And then the last one is limit or innovate, and that just means you have low demand. And you could have amenities you've already invested in, and because society has maybe changed or it wasn't a good decision in the first place, whatever, you might have amenities that, we're not saying you should go and shut the light off necessarily, but if funding pressures got that tight, or if a major investment was required in that amenity just to maintain it, just to keep it going, that you might consider reducing a service level. At the end of the day, all of these amenities, indoor and outdoor, are good for the community. This is just about whether we have the right amount, and then the prioritization is about which ones can generate the most return for your investment in. So this is the results. I call them draft results at this point for indoor. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will draw your attention to the number of enhanced titles there are aside all of those amenities. And I think that is indicative of the fact that you've grown. It's indicative of the fact that I think the community has thought about investing in some of these things in the past, but maybe hasn't necessarily pulled the trigger on some of them yet. And it's indicative of the fact that you're actively exploring feasibility and master plans and things that address some of these or deal with some of these indoor amenities. I don't always, like when we run this kind of assessment, I would say this is unfortunately for you, an uncommonly large number of enhanced results that we've seen here, but it also means that if you have the ability, there's lots of good you can do with investment if you're able to invest. Outdoor, you can see there are some enhanced, there are some less enhanced, but there definitely are some, and there's actually even one limit. But for the most part, what this assessment's rendered is there's quite a few areas that you could improve in. But even protecting the service levels that you have, I think are gonna be hard, or that's gonna be a tough chore. And that's why we think that you need that other element of this, which is prioritization. So prioritization looks at the results of the service level assessment, but just adds some more perspective, lenses, criteria to that to help kind of decipher which amenities might render the best return for your investment. And that could be investment in new or enhancing. I do think, unfortunately, for a lot of communities, that prioritization might even help with, if you have $1 to spend on infrastructure headaches and you've got $10 you need to spend, it might even help you figure out where you can allocate that asset management contribution to. So these criteria are public benefit, financial impact, in the report, you'll be able to understand these a bit more, but financial impact is cost. Public benefit is kind of the qualitative aspect of the amenity. There's some different kind of ways to measure that. Future proofing, so the ability to do something different with that amenity if you were able, because they typically have a 50-year lifespan. Partnership capability, whether that amenity draws partnership interest. What you just heard about, I would suggest, is partnership interest. From our perspective, it's about leveraging your investment with partner investment, whether that be through an operator agreement, capital costs, or what have you. So partnership comes into play. And then community development, and that's really about the broader impact of the amenity on the community for economic development, non-local spending, attractiveness, that kind of thing. So when we put both of those lists together, we have some more buckets for you to consider here. Indoor amenity prioritization is up in front of you. You have high priorities in the orange, medium priorities in the yellow, and then lower priorities in the blue. Again, I just want to remind council that investment in any of these things, or the benefit that comes from any of these things, is being experienced in the community right now. It's not to say we throw any of these out or they're not good. It's just that some, based on that logic, based on those criteria, some kind of rise to the top in terms of how good they are for the community. The amenities that are in bold are the ones from the previous list that have the enhanced sticker on them, or they're in the enhanced bucket. So you can see for indoor amenities, program rooms, multi-purpose program rooms, libraries, leisure pool, and ice arena are the ones that are high priorities, that the door is open for enhancing a service level if you wanted to walk through it or think about walking through it. And then the same can be said for the medium priorities. There are enhanced stickered amenities there too, which means you might even decide to walk through that door for those amenities as well. What we're trying to do here is help council, help administration, help communities navigate this whirlwind of demand that exists for these kinds of services. So we're trying to organize them using some transparent logic that everybody can understand, to just say, like, again, they're all important, but some might be more important than others. And based on the stats and the data that we have, you either have the right amount, or you could use more or less of these if push came to shove, or if you had a window to invest. So these are the indoor ones. These are the outdoor ones. Again, with some relevance to the previous presentation, Ball Diamonds rendered a high priority and an enhance, to suggest that both some of the other planning work that the town's already engaged in, and maybe what the previous presentation was about, is in alignment with this, or this aligns with that. But I did, like that's really the, I guess, most important part of my presentation today, is just relaying this information to you and giving you a sneak peek into what the draft plan will have, because I know that this information is very relevant to you in real time right now. I'll just reiterate this one more time. I think I already did, but in terms of action planning, in terms of what the master plan will say about this information, those high priority or enhanced amenities, those might warrant feasibility study. So again, that's not to say you should go and have a feasibility study done. It's not to say you need to add more inventory of this amenity, or change the lighting of it to make it a better quality, or whatever it is. But it is to say, if you have a window, if you're being asked to explore something, or if you have groups that want to partner to explore something, you at least have a list to kind of cross-reference when you're faced with those decisions. So the high priority ones would definitely warrant feasibility study. The medium and low enhanced amenities, there were no low enhanced amenities, but if there was, they might also warrant feasibility study too. But if you were to venture into that, or after accepting this plan and the logic that's in it, you'd be doing that just knowing that there may be some other ones that could have could be more impactful. But I can say from experience that I've seen communities make decisions to explore feasibility with the medium ranked ones too. And all of them should be subject to proper asset management, which I know the town already thinks about and is an issue for almost every municipality we work in. I just wanted to say some realities. These are maybe musings of a consultant in this area. The plan will probably have some of these statements or flavors built into it. I think that might help with expectation setting in the public and in the community. But first off, I honestly don't think that communities are going to be able to afford to do everything that they want to do in this service area. I mean, you could easily say that right now, because if you had unlimited resources, you'd be doing more than you are. But it just keeps getting worse every year that the capital cost inflation numbers come in and things increase in cost. Just on that, like when I first started this job, I've been doing it for 23 years. My first feasibility study for a pool, the price tag of the pool was 3.5 million for the whole pool. By the time my study was done, it was at 5 million because it was in one of those hyperinflation periods. And to replace that same pool right now, it'd be at least 45 to 50 million. And that's in a span of 20 years. I don't make 20 times what I made back then. I don't know if any of you do, but that's the beauty of being in this realm of making public decisions is you have to make a decision about something that costs 20 times more than it did when people can still remember, which is pretty ridiculous. The other thing is that growth by its nature is going to lead to the deterioration of service levels. Like I know we embrace and we celebrate growth, and I'm not telling anybody to or not to do that. Most communities do that, not all communities. But the more you grow in population, I haven't come across a community in any of my work across Canada that's been able to keep up with growth and meet the same service levels that you had last year when you had more people. And I use this is public knowledge, and I am working there right now, but the city of Edmonton grows, and Calgary probably the same. I just don't know the stat off my top of my head, but they grow by 100,000 people a year. So that's like a mini city that they have to, and their schedule of adding facilities and major infrastructure is similar to yours, to be honest. So service levels deteriorate with growth. And then the other thing I would say is how we've built this and how we will try to build all of the plan or any of the main kind of direction setting tools that are in it is that we're going to tell you what those tools render as an output now based on what we heard, what the community said, what our research is. But we've also built them in a way that you can revisit that on your own, or we can use the same tools to revisit it for you in some cycle, 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, whatever it is. And I would suggest that the time that's right to do that is when you know something's different about your community. So if it's another 20,000 people, that's probably a good time. If you just got a new plant that brought, a whole bunch of extra money into the community, that's another good time. Or if something bad happened, that might be another good time. But we'll build the tools, we'll build the plan to be able to adapt as the inputs change. Just briefly before I'm done, some of the other things that the plan will cover, I'm not here to talk about those today yet, but probably next time you see me, I will be talking about those, or Megan, my colleague, will be. The first is about your approach to service delivery. So right now you use, I'd say primarily an indirect approach to deliver parks, rec, and culture services. Like you have partners that deliver on your behalf. That conversation you just had is a prime example of an indirect service delivery discussion. There's no right or wrong way to do this, and that approach can definitely stretch your dollars further, but it also comes with a bit of baggage, and that baggage is having somebody at the municipality, somebody in admin, well-versed at contracts and managing contracts. It's about building relationships with those service providers that I know Michelle and some of her staff have done and have in the past. Case in point, delivering a presentation with them. But it's not as simple as just piecing things off and forgetting about them. And also, I would say, and one thing we'll strive to do in the plan for you, I say this with as much respect as possible, it's about holding those partners accountable for certain things or certain outputs, outcomes that you want to see with your investment in those assets. And I don't know if that makes sense when I say that or not, but if you think about it, when the SLS Center was invested in, there was a rationale that people like you, was anybody on council for even the last one? Yeah, okay, so you remember a decision, an investment decision. You had some expectations that helped you make that investment. And you want to make sure that you're going to get those expectations or as close to those expectations as possible, regardless of whether it's town staff running it, a third party running it, a private, a nonprofit, whatever. And I'm not saying that's not happening right now, but I will say that based on the strategic fabric that you have in the community right now, there isn't an easy place to go and see what some of those expectations might be and how we might want to go about those relationships. It's a good start with the agreement that you're working on right now with the Lions, but it doesn't exist in some kind of generic place, which hopefully this plan will be, at least the first draft will be anyways. The other things we'll talk about is investment in that approach. That is kind of like that baggage that comes with an indirect approach. There's different things that you think about and invest in. We'll talk about overall focus. Even in Envision, there's a discussion about a better, more enhanced leadership role of the town in the arts and culture community. So that's what I mean by overall focus. We'll deal with that. And then we'll also, we definitely don't have any magic here, but we'll talk about ways that communities can or could or do in some other instances fund these services in maybe a less traditional way. Again, I don't want to set the expectation of council that it's going to be a silver bullet or, you know, magic or anything, but there's definitely a little bit of innovation happening there, which will probably bake into the plan. And I think some of your admin is already thinking about some of those ideas as we speak. So next steps are to gather further feedback from council and administration, continue to draft the plan. And like I said, the next time you see me, I'm not sure, it'll probably be here again as information, but it'll be to talk more about what else is in the plan and what that amenity assessment and prioritization means in terms of potential infrastructure planning moving forward. Again, not to make any decisions for you, and I don't want to set the expectation that once you approve this plan, it just means a bunch of stuff's going to happen, because that's not the case, but it'll just help you get to the next stage of development when council is ready to make those investment decisions. So thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I guess I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Romer, for your presentation. Actually, a lot of the things that you said did make me think about the last presentation that we just saw, and especially talking about community partnerships and things along that line, and about really delivering some of the services that we know our community wants. So maybe it was just luck of the way you fell on this agenda after the last item, but it does put in a lot of things into focus and into context, so thank you for that. I will open it up to council at this point. I do have a question, but I will wait till my colleagues can ask theirs first. So Councillor McFadden, you're up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation, your overview. Yeah, like the synergy between the Lions conversation and this has been pretty good. Of course, you identified partnerships, which is one of the things that appeals to me most about the Lions conversation, is that need to get innovative and have partnerships to deliver on those community pieces. So so I picked that out of your presentation. I saw on your list there was a high demand for youth-focused spaces. Can you define what that is for me? I know currently my kid likes to hang out at the Found Bookstore because they can hang out in the basement and drink coffee. And one of the youth members on our Parks and Rec committee said they wanted to have monkey bars, not because they like them, but because they can sit on them and hang out. So if you could just define for me what youth-focused spaces means.
Yeah, through the deputy chair, I got a 15-year-old too, and I can't figure out what he's thinking most of the time either. So I got to admit, like, it is a bit of a nebulous term, and it probably could be a stamp that you put on some of those other amenities that are in the list. But it is, it's a common one to include in these lists still, just like our older adult or seniors facilities are. But they tend to be, you know, kind of a product of some of those other amenities. It helps in our planning because, you know, you can say a swimming pool with a youth focus as part of a future direction. I think that's maybe even why leisure came up a little bit higher than lap pool in our prioritization. But I can't sit here and give you the exact definition of it. I would say that traditionally, a youth center type space is what you'd call those youth focused spaces, but there's a reason why we don't call it youth center either, and we say youth focused spaces. And again, back to SLS Center, because I always visit facilities when I come to do these things, like a youth focused space could be the ping pong tables in the hallway, or they could be the gym spaces where teenagers are playing pickup basketball like an hour ago that I saw.
Okay. Alrighty, I guess I was hoping for the explicit, but I can't get explicit out of my 14-year-old either, so we're good. On your list, I didn't see curling, and maybe I didn't see it on the second round.
Yeah, if it's not there, then that's why I caveated the presentation as draft, because it definitely has to be there. Oops, I went the wrong way. It might not be there.
So, and maybe I was just blind, but I didn't see curling.
Yeah, it isn't there. It has to be there, so we'll include it. And I would also say to council, like, if you have some obscure in a good way demand that you've experienced from a community resident or amenity that's not on here that you'd like some direction on, that you wouldn't obviously already be providing, we can still run it through this and say whether 0 is the right amount or you could think about providing this. One example could be paddle or padel, some people call it. I don't know if anybody's heard of that yet or if you've fielded those kind of requests, but it's possibly the new pickleball, but I don't think it's the new pickleball. But it's a different racket sport that's, Calgary's talking about it right now. You'll probably see it. If you haven't heard of it, you'll probably see it sometime soon.
Okay.
So we can put those other ones in, and we definitely should have curling in there, so thank you for that. And sorry I didn't give you more clarity on the use spaces, but that is like our standard answer for that, so.
Fair. And then my last question before I turn it over to my colleagues, and again, carrying over from the previous conversation, ball diamonds, we're getting 2 new diamonds brought online at Greystone, and it looks through the Lions partnership, we could keep 2. Does that, in your early evaluation of the numbers, does that bring us even with what our demand is, or are we still behind?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's probably a good way to explain how the tool works. I can't tell you that right now. Like, I can't say that you're deficient in 2 or that you should add 2. All I can say is that if you were to invest in more, which you are already, once you're in the groove with that new level of either better ones without the chain link sticking out the wrong way or new ones, then you run the assessment again and it spits out an answer. Like, that's kind of how this tool is meant to be. So it's not, we really avoid saying you need 2 more to achieve a 1 per 1,500 population ratio or something like that. It's really, because there's so many moving parts, it's really something you need to revisit after you've experienced not only having that and seeing the utilization, but also any changes in the community composition that might have existed that changes whether you need or whether you can kind of warrant or use ball diamonds to the same degree that you used to use them. The other thing I'll say about ball diamonds though is there's a variety of different types of ball. Is anybody a ball player on council? Anybody played ball before?
Pat's our
maybe?
ball player.
I'm a very poor ball player, yes.
Yeah, well, you can be a poor ball player and you can play slow pitch. You can play orthodox or softball, some people call it, which is almost like fastball, which is like this, but it's throwing as hard as you can underhand without going all the way around. Slow pitch is the loop. Then you can have kids fastball that has 4 or 5 different diamond sizes that are needed to like host events and play different types of, or having different age groups play. And then you have baseball, and baseball goes from small kids all the way up to men, and there isn't a standard type of size of baseball diamond. So when it comes to ball diamonds, even though we've treated it that way at the strategic level, and we just said ball diamonds in general, when it comes to specific site planning or even discussions with partners like this, there is another level of study that's required. It usually happens internally, and I know like Michelle internally has already done some of that work, but it's kind of like a feasibility study, but more about the different types and complexion and contemporary demand for ball that you have in the community at any given time. So it's a really complex one. Soccer's bad, but not nearly as bad as ball. Soccer's just got different rectangles. Ball's like lots of different variations. Sure, yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to add through the chair to Councillor McFadden. So your question, I think also what you were getting at is currently in our 2012 master plan, because we haven't gotten to that level of detail with this master plan, but in our 2012 master plan, even with the Greystone diamonds coming on and keeping the rodeo diamonds, we are 3 short for 2027. So that, just to give you some context of where that master plan kind of outlined our growth, and our growth in that master plan was much lower than what we've actually experienced.
Sorry, let me just rephrase. That was the 2012
The 2012 master
rec plan.
Yeah.
We're already short 3 diamonds.
Yes.
From that. Okay, thank you. That answered my question, because as we're trying to prioritize things.
But I just want to highlight something about that too. I don't think we want to end up at a place where this plan says you should have 5 more in 10 years. Because you're going to be 10 years out saying the exact same thing and being surprised that you aren't achieving that. And that's what I mean by the flavor of the plan. You're not going to be able to meet the service levels you have right now, probably. And even if you could, they might not even be relevant in 10 years. Because the more people, like those of you that have lived in this community a long time would know that the last 10,000 people or 5,000 people that you've added isn't the same complexion of the first 5,000 that lived here, or the 5,000 that maybe you were part of when you joined the community. So that has to come into play too, and that's why we avoid, like we used to write plans like Michelle's referring to, that's what they used to look like, and then we'd come back to council and we'd realize 10 years later that those weren't achievable, and they're also setting expectations in the community that couldn't be met, and discomfort in the community and so on. So we've changed a little bit of how we do that. They think we still give you the direction you need, but we don't set as stringent of a expectation for the mid to long-term future, because we don't believe that's what's best for you.
Okay. And I think one of the things that resonated the most was the quote you gave us a little bit earlier, that service levels deteriorate with growth, which is sad and frustrating and
Sad,
all of the
yeah.
things, so thank you.
It is sad.
Councillor Wilson?
Question about the rec needs due to growth conversation we're just having there. When you were breaking it down between indoor and outdoor amenities, I assume in your ranking matrix funding realities weren't considered, in particular the realities of offsite levy funds only available for indoor rec. That wouldn't be part of your matrix you built, I would assume.
Yeah, like the new offsite levy availability for indoor definitely comes into play, but some of the outdoor amenities are covered with your regular, like existing levies when you have development. It depends how accountable you hold the developer to in terms of the kind of finish of the open space that they have within their development, but some of those outdoor amenities get picked up in that as well. So I guess the answer is yes, and affordability is built into it, but I wouldn't say it the fact that that offsite levy is available to one and not the other doesn't kind of constrain outdoor versus indoor either.
I assume that would be the answer. I just, while you're in front of us, because we have the opportunity, I wanted to ask, in your other municipal experience, how are communities handling indoor rec OSL funding? What's the cutting edge? What are the best communities in that subject doing from your experience? Is there any nuggets of wisdom you could provide?
I'm gonna try to make this as short as possible, because I have lots of different feelings about this right now, but I would say one of the key tools that municipalities that are charging those OSLs for indoor facilities that they have to have in place right now is some kind of study. It looks like a feasibility study, but typically it's not a real feasibility study because they're so forward-looking. It's like a hypothetical picture of what a facility could be. And what a hypothetical cost of that facility could be 20 years out or 10 years out. So for all of those reasons that I just said, maybe provision ratios and maybe predicting 10 years out isn't the best thing to do because things change. That's what the OSL conversation is forcing communities to do. Now, that being said, like we've done a couple, we're doing a couple in different communities right now where we're developing those studies to support the charging of the offsite levies. But wherever I can influence it, I'm saying like, make sure that when you're talking to the development industry, that you're saying this is what we think we need at that point, but we know it needs to be something major, but it might not be exactly like what this looks like. Because from their perspective, if any of you have been developers or talk to developers, they want some certainty, right? Because they want to be able to talk to sell their lots based on 3 water slide indoor swimming pool, which might not be what at the end of the day you need 20 years out. So you need to study, you need some tools to talk to the development industry. The ones that I know are capturing that for the most part, even in the Calgary region, have those studies in place, but I even know communities that are capturing the offsite levies for indoor and don't even have those studies in place. It is something that definitely is catching on more. Not every community does it, but I know of quite a few similar communities to you in the Calgary metro region that are, and that's why I meant by some other funding sources. Like, that's definitely one that we'll talk to in our plan, and I also think that your admin's already looking into that, but I can't speak for them.
Great, okay. Just in particular, when certain feasibility studies come before us, I'm thinking the library one we've already got underway, or an arena one that's, I believe, in the process where we're right there to do it. Are you very pro feasibility study like I'm becoming, just simply so you can link it to offsite levies as quickly as possible? Am I?
Yeah.
Is that best practice? Is that what we're seeing successful communities do that are funding these things?
Yes, I think like a hybrid feasibility study and an offsite levy study at the same time is probably the way to go. Because the one thing that those other studies that I've seen where they're not, these are all this is all terminology, but one doesn't have public consultation in it. Because if you're looking 20 years out, it doesn't make sense to do consultation right now. But I do think that you can handle a lot of the requirements for offsite levies with feasibility study development or developing a feasibility study. But at the end of the day, the thing about a feasibility study is you might find it's not feasible too. And then that doesn't help you with your offsite levy discussion, right?
Okay.
It's funny, like the one, I'll just say one more thing about this offsite levy study. So I'm working in a community right now where they used an offsite levy study to build a fund to pay for the project that's actually being designed, and they still haven't got full council approval on it. So if I'm a developer, that doesn't make me feel very good either, to be paying for 10 years into something that maybe isn't even gonna happen yet, or maybe the community doesn't have enough funding to actually make it happen. So I think in general, I guess, the offsite levy discussion, although it's a tool that you should use, probably take advantage of, especially in a high growth area and where your neighbors are doing it, it has some kinks in it right now that'll probably get figured out in 20 years, but that's maybe too late for you for some of these projects you're looking at right now.
Okay, thanks for addressing that.
Mayor Nagel?
Yeah, I have a few comments. As some of my colleagues have already picked up, I thought it was worth pointing out that the report we're seeing here, I think, actually really supports the last conversation we had about the Lions Event Center, that we do need to be looking at creative ways to provide these services, because we can't just borrow money for all of it ourselves. And also, it was indoor spaces, event spaces was actually the top priority that your study identified, correct?
So it's in the list, higher up in the list for sure, yeah.
Okay, great. And then second, I also just wanted to say something, again, my colleagues already mentioned it. I appreciate the mention of the challenges of growth. I have felt that the growth conversation has been kind of this like elephant in the room that a lot of consultants are often afraid to call a spade a spade. And the reality is keeping up with growth is very difficult and very expensive, not always a positive. And then next, I want to talk about the methodology in the study. When I reviewed the draft, I had some questions about whether or not the utilization of fields and arenas were being understated in the study. When the draft comes back, will there either be a recalculation of that utilization or some asterisks to explain the data within the draft that goes public?
100%, and we looked back at it too, and one of the other areas of service delivery recommendation that we are going to make, whether you take it or not, or kind of act on it or not, is to hold your partners and your groups more accountable to give you better data. Because like whether you're collecting that data or you're in charge of it or you own it or not, you need it to be able to feed models, but even just understand what's going on. And like and this isn't unique to Cochrane, some elements of it are unique to Cochrane, but we feel a need to have that recommendation in there. Like the sector in general is not good at data. My volunteer work is trying to change that, and we have some cool stuff happening, but in general, we don't have the answers that say if Parks, Rec and Culture were a private sector provided service, they'd probably have a lot of basic answers that we just don't have right now. And that in no way is a shot to your admin or your partners that are working for you right now. It's just to say that it's not commonplace as much as it should be in a Parks, Rec and Culture sector. So we just keep making these recommendations, giving ideas on how to improve that. And eventually, and we're not the only consultant saying that, and eventually I think it'll get better.
But beyond granular details, my concern was that the utilization was being calculated on an assumption of 365-day a year utilization of 15 hours per day. Even when we're looking at the ice utilization, could we just look at 9 months, and when we're looking at the field utilization, could we look at 4 or 5 months or something like that? Just there's a clearer picture in the data that goes public.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that into consideration, but I will go back to say that we need to have the granularity of the data to be able to do that. And even though it seems like a really simple request or that it exists, I wouldn't say for sure that it exists for all of the amenities that we've done analysis for.
My specific request was for the ice surfaces and the fields, which I think we could probably get you that data as to when they're closed. And then with regards to development sites, you made an interesting comment about holding developers more accountable, or I don't know the exact terminology you use, but you just said something about making developers build nice rec facilities, outdoor ones within their lands. Do you have any particular policy recommendations for council to explore?
Well, we're gonna look at that for sure, and I don't want to get tripped by a developer on my way out of here, because everybody has an important part to play, and it's about balance, right? But in communities where the balance of power is in the municipalities' side, I think you have the ability to ask more of your developers than in community. Like I know communities that don't take any MR and don't get any cash in lieu because they just want growth for whatever reason, and they don't have anybody, banging on their door for that. So it really depends on the leverage you have in that specific conversation. But there are examples of communities that ask a lot, and then there's communities that don't ask a lot. So part of our work will delve into that to some degree, but I wouldn't say that that's not the sole purpose of this or the focus of it.
Yeah, and I guess just to put a fine point on the question, is it really just a matter of making the most of your municipal reserve allocations where it really happens, or are there extra tools out there that you've seen other municipalities leveraging to go above that 10% allocation?
Yeah, like just as a rule of thumb, I'll give you a couple of my maybe opinion-based things. But again, if we make these in a plan, sometimes they get adjusted because it's not the philosophy of the community. But like the first would be never to take cash in lieu, always take the 10%. You can use tools like easements to protect environmental areas or different land designations to protect. Like you can't go and put a ball diamond on it, but you can get more open space in your community, more connection with nature through some of those tools if you can get them designated before subdivision occurs or whatnot. And there are also communities like, just from a land perspective first up, but there's communities that have funds set up, sometimes fed through cash in lieu in industrial areas and stuff like that, but they have funds set up that are meant to actually acquire more land for community purposes. Like I personally don't think 10% is enough. I don't know if that's
I think we would agree with that. We don't take, typically don't take cash in lieu. 10% doesn't meet our needs. When you talk about the schools, open space, pathways, it's nowhere near our needs.
Like I mentioned volunteer work, and I'm probably talking way too much here, so I'm gonna stop after I say this last statement here, but part of my volunteer work is advocating for Parks and Rec. One of the things the last MGA, at the time the MGA was opened up, was we were advocating for more than 10%. That didn't happen, but that's kind of a position that an expert in the field like me would probably, especially one that doesn't work for developers, like we don't do that too. Some consultants do work on both sides or whatever, but like we would just say it just doesn't seem to be enough for all of the demands that municipalities have on their public land.
Interesting. That might help explain your honesty about growth. So in terms of next steps, how would we best utilize this process to inform a prioritization decision for council? When's the final draft of this thing coming back?
I don't know about the final draft, but the first draft would be set to be in front of you like well within the first quarter of next year. But then there's an engagement process that we're committed to do after, and depending on what that looks like, could take long, could be short, it could be long. And then I can't speak for council in terms of accepting this, because even though it maybe is going to be more general than and less specific than previous plans, it's still not going to be. I don't know if it'll be super easy for everybody to agree with it, because it'll have some pretty interesting ideas in it. It won't commit you to too much, but it might have, too much to get an easy sort of acceptance. So I don't know how long it'll take to actually get it approved at the end of the day either.
Is admin able to comment on the timing of this? Because we've recently been talking about delaying some decisions, such as funding for particular projects based on the conclusion of this.
Through the chair to Mayor Nagel, the decisions and the kind of charts that I was speaking to around budget with Horse Creek was these specific charts of the prioritization. So seeing that ball diamonds are high priority, but also recognizing that council has a lot of decisions to make. So that was what I wanted to make sure that you were seeing, kind of all of the priorities and how they were starting to show up, recognizing that the master plan is coming in 2026.
Okay, thanks. And then I did have, sorry if I can keep going, just a couple more things. You suggested that if there was any other projects, we should run them through the same analysis. Something that I don't know if I saw, but it might have been on there, is indoor turf specifically for soccer and rugby. I heard lots about that from certain members of the
Yeah,
community.
I'm pretty sure.
Is that in there?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
it's on a medium, right now it's a medium priority, but it's an enhance.
Okay,
So,
excellent. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Singh.
Thank you for your presentation. So based on your analysis and community engagement so far, can you share what the data suggests regarding how many additional parks, ice surfaces, and indoor or outdoor fields Cochrane may need as our population continue to grow?
Yeah, I can, through the chair, I can comment on that, but I can't say specifically whether you need more than you have right now. But I can say that this list here first, and Councillor, I can't remember all the ones you said, but you said ice arena, so ice arena is one you could have more of right now.
Yeah.
But I think it's a limitation of this, but I think it's also a benefit of this approach is that it doesn't have one or two attached to it. It just says you could make investment in that. Because at the end of the day, you may have the opportunity to invest in two or three at the same time, but in a lot of cases, you only have a chance to invest in one anyways. So how this is organized is it does give some direction on that, but it doesn't necessarily get as specific as saying how many, and also set the expectation of how many in the public that you might be on the hook to develop. One other thing I'll say though is when you get into a feasibility study level of planning, you get way more granular in terms of supply and demand assessment than what we've done in our work. So this is like a gateway into doing more detailed planning, which either you might hire someone to do or your min might do. And I do think that even some of the comments you made, Mayor Nagel, about the specifics of prime time and non-prime, and sometimes you have Class A, Class B prime time, early morning can be prime time, and so on. All of that gets dealt with a finer grain in a feasibility study before you actually make that decision. Like right now, we've opened the door for it to happen. I'm not absolving ourselves of getting to a better level of detail here to meet your expectation, but I would say that you're going to get into that again if you do a feasibility study for ice arenas, and that'll be like very, very detailed at that point.
Sure. The follow-up question would be, so will the master plan provide guidance on the potential revenue generation opportunities or service level adjustments, for example, in the ice usage or other recreation services, so that the Cochrane can maintain or improve offerings compared to similar communities?
Through the chair, yeah, we'll have some guidance on that. The one thing I would say is, in terms of revenue generating capability, and like the main one is user fees or rental rates, but there's other ones. Because you have that indirect service delivery approach, you're a little bit limited on as to how you can tap into those or even require those of your partners, right? Like that goes back to the agreements you might have in place with them, or the communication and collaboration that you have with them. So we will talk about that, and definitely from a capital perspective, we'll hit on the couple that we've talked about here tonight, like offsite levies and maybe levies in general as new tools that municipalities are using to fund these things.
The final question would be, with many amenities identified as priorities, do we currently have resources, financial, operational, and staffing to implement these recommendations? Will the plan help identify areas where phased investment, partnerships, or resources adjustments may be needed?
Yeah, through the chair, I can't answer that directly as a consultant, but my guess would be no, you don't. And I think part of the strategy that we bring forward with this different way of presenting a plan is to try to make it, put it in as bite-sized of pieces as possible, so that we're not committing you to too much, but we're also respecting and acknowledging what we hear from the community or what our research suggests that you could invest in if you had the financial capability to do so. When it comes to the nuts and bolts of reserves or tax levies or whatever, that's not, we won't get into that level of direction in our plan, but we might suggest that you use all of those tools or use some of those tools to the best of your ability to fund this stuff.
Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you. I'm particularly interested in the multipurpose program rooms being at the top of the list. To me, I'm making some assumptions, but I think that speaks to a pretty active community with some pretty diverse needs of what their programming looks like. I know we also learned that there was some demand for specific community hall type amenities. I see synergy in that, again, with the previous presentation of something that Cochrane wants. I also think it's a bit of a future-proof amenity that has that ability to shift. And my question for you is that quite unique to Cochrane, or is that a trend you're seeing all over the place?
Through the chair, I'd say it's maybe a bit unique based on the amount of those types of spaces that you have right now and maybe the demographic that you have, but it typically is a fairly high priority and one that you can make a case for enhancing because it can accommodate almost anything. Like when you say multi-purpose program room can be a big meeting room that you could have a council meeting in if you wanted to, or a group meeting, and then you could also use it for a physical activity, a creative activity, depending on how big it is, even a larger social gathering. Like the multi-purpose room in my community in Sherwood Park, my favorite example is it had carpet like this, it had 4 walls and pretty small area. My son was doing Taekwondo in it on the carpet. So anything can really happen in those facilities. And they tend to be fairly accessible too. They're not super expensive and able to accommodate a whole bunch of different things.
I see that type of amenity as being fairly innovative in the sense that it can be anything you want it to be, and then therefore the utilization would end up being really, really high.
Exactly, multi-purpose, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Gill?
I guess this is kind of a criteria question. Just looking at things surface level. For example, indoor turf. I just don't understand how that's not a high priority and how that rating is given. Just because, we have none. It's not that we have maybe 1 or 2. We have no turf. So that's just an example. I'm just wondering how that's rated as a medium priority. So.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, sorry, through the chair, it is one that's typically a high priority for us. So like we'll go back and look at the scoring on it. But at the end of the day, I know I haven't showed it to you, but when you see the draft product, you'll be able to actually see how we scored each one of these, and it is transparent. So we might have it adjusted by then, but if it isn't adjusted, we're more than willing to have that conversation with council or admin or whatever about the interpretation of using that tool. Because it is possible that you use that tool to revisit things in the future without us, and you might score differently at that point, right? So you need to have you can have as much influence on that as you want as a client of ours, for sure.
I'm excited to see the report, so that's all. Thank you.
Cool.
Mayor Nagel?
Yeah, that actually prompted a thought for me. I'm wondering about methodology. How is public engagement and community feedback weighted in the establishment of that list? I paid a lot of attention to the utilization, the maps and stuff like that when I was looking at the draft. But how are you weighting the qualitative stuff?
Yeah, so the public benefit picks it up a little bit on the prioritization, but I would say for the most part, the public engagement component, sorry, through the chair, is brought forward through the service level assessment. So it is part of that demand equation. It's one of those 4 criteria. And the stronger the kind of community voice, especially coming from the public and the groups, or the organized and the unstructured, if you want to think of it that way, the higher score it gets with the demand criteria. Right now, they're equally weighted, all 4 of those. But I would also say that even though they're equally weighted, the public engagement material is really important to the demand side of the equation, I would say. We can change that, like we can weight it differently, but right now we tend to keep that structure, the supply and demand and the criteria in place in all the communities that we work in. We don't usually make that kind of available for adjustment in terms of weighting, because we kind of feel that that's our expertise that we're bringing forward and our knowledge of the situation. But it can be done. So if that doesn't, it does seem like, Mayor Nagel, you might take a deeper dive into it when you get to look at it. So we're definitely, at the end of the day, this needs to reflect the town. So if that means changing it a little bit, we definitely can.
Well, my follow-up question is in how you conducted in-person engagement. Specifically wondering, like, did you set up in front of an ice rink or at the library to collect opinion? Because that would be heavily skewed towards those facilities. Or did you make sure that you were collecting diverse?
So I should have the answer to that through the chair, but that was Megan's bailiwick, so, and Michelle's more than mine, so I'll let you answer that.
So through the chair to Mayor Nagel, what we did for all of the engagement was we had various locations for pop-ups. We had our community survey, we were at the SLS Center, we were at the library, we did youth engagements, we also did community group surveys, so you see the 84 participants there, and then community group pop-ups. We invited every single community group that exists within our database, so there's about 180 of them, to these pop-ups, and then we also did one-on-one interviews and group interviews with those groups as well. So that was how we kind of went through all of the different engagement process.
Do you know the breakdown of where the physical responses were collected? It is 25% of the weighting in the prioritization. So I would just be interested if there's an outlier of, like, for example, like if 75% of the physical responses occurred right in front of a hockey arena.
Well, I can tell you that one of the engagement processes where we were at Trunk or Treat 2 years ago. So we were engaging with all the families coming through. We didn't set up specifically in front of the arena. We were in like the SLS like lobby area. But we were trying to be really creative with how we were actually engaging with the community. We were at the farmers market. Often at the farmers market, we were hearing a lot about parks, and we were having to really kind of tease out, like, what does recreation and culture look like, because people were outside and they were really thinking about parks. So we tried to make sure that we were in all of the different areas. We were also set up at the outhouse races. So it was all kind of multifaceted, really.
Okay, thanks. And sorry if it seems like I'm being overly skeptical of the whole process. It's actually, the more I ask these questions, the more I know I can lean on the study with confidence. So,
Yeah, we'd be
Thank you.
happy to answer all of the questions that you
okay,
have.
thank you.
And I know you've met Megan before, she just texted me and Michelle said all the stuff that she said, but I could have answered it too. So she is watching at home and she's sorry she can't be here tonight.
I guess that leaves me, I do have a couple questions on the outdoor lens. Was cross-country skiing brought up? I know it's been mentioned to me a couple different times about creating like packed trails that people can actually ski on.
No, I don't see it on here, sorry, or to the chair. No, I don't see it on here, so it's definitely one that we can add to the mix. The only caveat I'll say about adding ones is our engagement program was built upon these lists too. So if we add one that wasn't on the list when we asked a survey question about it, then we might not be able to like give it credit or no credit in those aspects of it, but it definitely, or was on, okay, it was on the list, never mind.
Okay, well, that answers that one.
Okay.
And then when it came to like park benches, and I think it was shade that people were looking for, what kind of innovative ways are communities providing like a shade aspect? I mean, I've heard it a lot at our different community events, especially in summer. It's hot out. Obviously, you're not building shelters everywhere for people to have shade, but what are some communities doing from an innovative idea to keep that cost down low, but providing what the residents are looking for?
You know, to the chair, we could actually probably provide some images of that in our report for you when we bring it forward in the final stages. But I would say the most, excuse me, the most innovative approach to that I see is a combination of public art and shade at the same time. Like they're definitely not. If I could show you the pictures that are in my head right now, they're definitely not what you think is even meant to cast shade, but it definitely does, especially when you study like the sun travel patterns and stuff like that. But making it more of a statement aesthetically. In the Lower Mainland, they have a lot of cooling stations too, like spray water type stations. We don't have the same issues that they have there necessarily, but yeah, there's different ways that communities are attacking it. The best we'll be able to do, like we're not landscape architects or designers necessarily. You'd hire someone to come up with something fancy or whatever, but we can definitely show you some pictures of stuff or ideas that we've come across as part of our other practices.
Yeah, I would love to see that, because obviously planting trees is, take about 50 years to get any real shade going. And the only other thing that I have to comment on is, so your utilization that you talk about, is that going to go into a deeper dive if we do obviously a feasibility study? You're going to touch a little bit on the utilization, but obviously that becomes a deeper dive in the feasibility study portion of it?
Yeah, to the chair, for sure. Like we're trying to achieve a balance of getting as granular as we can at this point, but across all of those different amenities too. So we're not really doing, if you're making a 40 or an 80 or 20 or whatever $1 million decision, we're not doing enough justice to diving into that subject matter for you to make that decision. That's what a feasibility study does. And I would also say that that's not just about utilization. That's only one aspect of it, but even more integrated or in-depth conversations with user groups, users, all of that stuff happens in a feasibility study to a better, more granular level of detail and more informative level of detail for you to make an investment decision than what we've done here. We're still at that, we're not at Envision, right? We're a couple steps down from that, but we're not at a place where I would feel comfortable telling you to make an investment decision, a major investment decision based on this analysis. This is just one step, sorry, door opening or closing, and that's it.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that there's, we get used to doing things the way we've always done them, right? And sometimes we stop asking those questions, but I think nowadays, I mean, people go to school at different times. There's a lot of homeschooling. There's a lot of options that I don't think we consider when it's utilizing, like, say, ice times or gym times, or looking at, perhaps talking to our school partners. Like, there's a lot of aspects there that I think we should be considering, as well as we have a population that borders on us that also uses our rec facilities, right? So I think it's a much bigger conversation when it comes to utilizing just more than the numbers game is, and being creative of how we have to strategically, if you can't just add a an arena every other year to meet the demand, then you've got to be creative of who's getting the usage of the arena, which I think is something that we haven't really dug into.
Yeah, and I'll just maybe address that briefly, Chair, like, we'll talk about things like allocation policies, but this isn't gonna be an allocation policy. That would be a priority for like a recommendation that we would make. We might give some of the higher level principles that you'd consider to put in that, but we get hired just to do allocation policies for ICE. Lots, like we might have 10 of those in the last couple of years. It's not an easy discussion to have, and there's lots of discomfort and stuff that happens coming from a hockey dad, but there's definitely the need for ICE is always a combination of more, either quantity or quality, like better facilities, but also it's very rare that you see an example where a community is exhausting every opportunity they can to use what they have too. So it's usually like a balance of those two things. And I'm not saying that's the case here necessarily, but your feasibility study, if you do it, would tell you or give you more light, shed some more light on that. But that's why we get hired to do allocation studies or just ICE strategies or whatever, just looking at ICE because of that very, very reason.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I think we are all looking forward to the draft rec plan coming forward in 2026. Any other questions, council? No, I guess administration, you got everything that you needed for feedback?
Okay,
Perfect. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry I went longer than I should have.
Okay, we are going to move on to item 5E. Ms. Ambrose, you're still with us. We're discussing Community Association, Town of Cochrane Engagement Draft Terms of Reference.
Yes, I will try to be really quick here. So good evening, members of the Committee of the Whole. Tonight I'm presenting the Draft Community Association Engagement Terms of Reference. This framework is the first major deliverable stemming from Council's Notice of Motion on Civic Leadership and Engagement. My goal tonight is to walk you through the purpose, structure, and impacts of the Terms of Reference and gather your feedback before bringing the final version back for approval on January 12th. So earlier this year, Council set a clear direction to strengthen civic leadership and enhance how residents engage with the town. The April 14th Notice of Motion laid out several initiatives for administration to explore. In July, Council reviewed the follow-up report, which confirmed that the Community Association engagement component was ready to proceed. That report also highlighted the opportunity to bring more consistency, transparency, and predictability to how town supports neighborhood-based organizations. As Cochrane continues to grow, establishing a structured approach becomes increasingly important. Historically, engagement with community associations has varied across departments. This has led to differing expectations and varying levels of support, which can create uncertainty for volunteer-led neighborhood groups. The draft Terms of Reference presented this evening represents the next step in delivering on Council's direction. They outline a clear framework for how the town and community associations will work together, with defined roles and expectations with an annual engagement touchpoint. The remaining initiatives from the Notice of Motion will be brought forward to Council in early 2026. Tonight's focus is specifically on the community associations. So the purpose of this Terms of Reference is to bring clarity and consistency to how the town engages with community associations. As Cochrane continues to grow, we want to make sure that the Terms of Reference establishes that formal structure that outlines how the town and recognized community associations collaborate to support neighborhood connection. It also strengthens Council's connection with residents by creating intentional annual engagement opportunities. It creates a scalable model that can adapt as new neighborhoods form and existing ones evolve. So these are the guiding principles that form the foundation of the Terms of Reference and reflect the type of relationship the town aims to build with community associations. They emphasize the importance of collaboration so that our engagement with volunteer boards is respectful, coordinated, and constructive. Transparency is also key, ensuring that information, expectations, and process are communicated consistently across all neighborhoods. Equity is a central pillar of this framework. As Cochrane continues to grow, it's important that every neighborhood has fair access to town supports, regardless of size, maturity, or location.
At the same time, the terms of reference recognizes the autonomy of community associations as independent, volunteer-driven organizations. Accountability guides both sides of the relationship, ensuring responsible use of resources and clarity in roles and expectations. And finally, the principle of community leadership speaks to the heart of this work, empowering residents to play an active role in shaping the place where they live. So a community association, as defined in the terms of reference, is a nonprofit volunteer-led organization that represents a specific geographic area within Cochrane. These organizations play an important role in building neighborhood identity and connection. They do this through local programming events, communication, and by helping create a sense of belonging at the neighborhood level. They also serve as a structured point of contact for the town when they are looking to understand emerging issues, test ideas, or gather neighborhood-level perspectives. Community associations provide local insight that is grounded in lived experience. The geographic boundary component is intentional. The terms of reference is designed specifically for place-based representation, ensuring that each neighborhood has a consistent way to engage with the town as we continue to grow. As part of establishing a clear and consistent framework, it's important to outline what falls outside of the scope of the terms of reference. Homeowners associations are not included. Homeowners associations are private corporations created by developers to manage private amenities, funded through mandatory resident fees and governed through corporate bylaws. Their mandate and structure are fundamentally different from a neighborhood-based community association. Cultural, faith-based, identity-based, and newcomer groups play valuable roles in Cochrane, but they do not represent a defined geographic area. The same is true for interest-based organizations such as sports, arts, or hobby groups, as well as event-specific or program-specific committees like festival groups or Neighborhood Watch. All of these groups are important contributors to community life. However, this terms of reference is intentionally designed for place-based organizations that represent residents within a specific neighborhood boundary. This distinction ensures clarity, consistency, and a shared understanding of who the terms of reference applies to. One of the core purposes of the terms of reference is to bring clarity to the respective roles of the community associations, administration, and council. This clarity supports stronger relationships, consistent expectations, and accountability across all neighborhoods. For community associations, the terms of reference reinforces their role as the representative voice of their neighborhoods. They lead local programming and events, maintain their governance and financial responsibilities, and provide annual reporting that help us understand evolving needs and priorities. Their participation in structured engagement sessions is central to keeping communication open and constructive. For administration, the terms of reference formalizes our responsibility to support community associations in a consistent and predictable way. This includes maintaining the community association registry, providing tools, templates, and training, coordinating communication across departments, convening the internal community association working group. So one of the things that we would do if this terms of reference is approved, we would, Parks and Recreation Services would lead an internal working group across the departments to coordinate with the community associations. For council, the terms of reference outlines a governance level role, upholding the framework, participating in scheduled engagement opportunities, and avoiding operational direction to volunteer boards. Council's leadership in this space is important in championing, apparently that's a hard word right now, community involvement and reinforcing the value of resident-led initiatives. Together, these roles create a balanced approach that respects the autonomy of volunteer organizations while ensuring accountability, transparency, and strong alignment between the town and its neighborhoods. The engagement model outlined in the terms of reference creates predictable, structured touch points throughout the year, ensuring meaningful and consistent interaction between the town, community associations, and council. These touch points are intentionally balanced so that engagement is regular and constructive without placing undue pressure on volunteer boards. In the first quarter, the Community Association Conference brings together the internal working group and the entire Community Association Board, so all of their members. The focus here is on volunteer capacity building, sharing practices, and providing tools, templates, and supports that help the community association succeed. In the second quarter, the Community Leadership Forum connects the director level and the members of the executive leadership team with the community association presidents. This session creates space for sharing priorities, identifying emerging issues, and providing feedback in a collaborative, solutions-focused environment. The third quarter includes the Community Association Council Summit. This is Council's formal annual engagement opportunity with community association leadership. It provides a forum for relationship building, recognition, and shared dialogue on neighborhood level priorities. While this is a structured touch point, it's not exclusive. Council may still attend community association AGMs or community events when invited directly by the associations. Finally, in the fourth quarter, administration compiles the annual reporting submitted by all of the recognized community associations and brings forward a consolidated report to council. This provides a clear picture of volunteer activity, emerging themes, and neighborhood priorities across the community. Taken together, this structure ensures a full year of coordinated engagement while respecting the time and capacity of the volunteer boards. The terms of reference has minimal financial impact and requires no new staff. Any future enhancements, such as expanded grants or leadership programs, would come through a regular budget cycle. Tonight is council's opportunity to provide feedback on the draft terms of reference. Over the month of December, administration will refine the terms of reference based on the discussion this evening, incorporating clarity adjustments and any additional expectations that council has. And then the final terms of reference will return to council for approval on January 12th. Once approved, we will begin implementation immediately in Q1 of 2026. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions and take your feedback.
Thank you for the presentation. Councillor McFadden.
Yeah, thank you. So respectfully, which is a nice way of saying I'm grumpy about this, what have the last couple of community association meetings looked like?
Through the chair, Councillor McFadden, the past community association meetings have looked like, the ones that I've been involved, have included the directors or the executive director team with the presidents of the community association.
And then what has been the agenda of those meetings?
There is generally like a sharing of the information that is happening. So it's similar to what I outlined for happening in Q2. So sharing of different priorities, hearing what the community's pressure points are or things that they would like to see in their priorities, and then opening that dialogue with directors and the executive team.
Okay. So, yeah, so we're just out of sync with this because all I was really wanting to do, so when we set up back in 2007, these community association meetings, it generally worked that any community association could send 2 reps, whoever they best wanted to be. We would meet quarterly with senior staff and whatever council members would like to attend. And that would be pretty much the meeting, is every community association would be able to share their priorities, their questions, and it would be a dialogue for an hour and a half or so. And that worked very well for a number of years. And council was always able to attend. So then under the previous CAO's leadership, council was disinvited from those. So all of my expectation for this is I just want to return to quarterly meetings with the 2 reps, whoever they might want to be, for that type of a session. So yeah, so we're out of sync with what the vision was, and I apologize. I think maybe I should have had more to eat for dinner or something. But yeah, so this is out of sync with what my expectation was in asking for this work to be done. Also, I have concerns about the recognition and criteria that community associations must maintain a not-for-profit incorporation status. They must have their liability insurance of $2 million. They must provide an annual financial statement and summary of activities, and they have to agree to follow those terms of reference. I really wanted a more informal relationship. A lot of the community associations we have might just have a Facebook page. They don't have a formal membership list, but it worked really well. So, like I said, this is out of sync with what my expectation was. Like I said, I just wanted the ability for council and the community association reps to sit around the table with our staff and be able to, share their priorities, answer some of their concerns, get up to date on what's going on in their communities. So this is too prescriptive of a program for what I was envisioning, and I especially am quite flagged over the requirements for the community associations to be in that formal structure. So anyway, as the champion of this, it's out of sync of what I was looking for. So my individual ask as a counselor would be a redo to something more basic and returning to what we had last year, which I think will be both easier for community associations to participate in and for ourselves as well. So, sorry, a little bit perhaps too authentic at 9:29 at night, but yeah, this just not in sync on this one.
That's okay. If I can provide some context to the reporting and the insurance requirements and being a nonprofit. So most of the community associations that we currently work with actually work and operate under that model currently. So we provide them a grant to pay for their insurance. If they're hosting events and things like that, it's actually a requirement for them to be a nonprofit through the provincial kind of level. So that's why we built that in, because it was, how do we distinguish between a community association that is holding all of these types of events. So that's why I went down that path. I can definitely appreciate that we want to bring back the quarterly meetings, and I can make sure that that update is changed.
Yeah, because you're speaking to that membership, like, you know, Greystone is just getting up, I don't know if they're registered as a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
They are already, good
Yeah.
for them. But I think West Valley, West Terrace is probably not.
No, they're a group of one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually 1.5.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I appreciate the hard work and the forethought and the structure program of this, but no, it was really more about relationship building than where we leaned into.
Sounds good, thank you.
Mayor Nagel.
I would provide some balance to the conversation. I think what I'm hearing is that this is not quite meeting the expectations of what Councilor McFadden was hoping to get back, but I would also say that if the understanding of the task was to develop a very rigorous process to feed community associations into, I think it is a job well done. Just maybe a bit more than I think. I think the hope was just a couple of casual meetings, and instead we got like a really thorough program coming back. That's
if I can, I think one of the benefits of what's proposed here, though, too, is again helping build a framework for those community associations. I appreciate some of them are one person, but I think just based on the work in Glenbow as an example and what they've been able to do, I think it's a good framework. We can certainly take it away and pare it down, but again, once we get into some cadence with this and develop this, I think there's some really good opportunity here as well. But I also appreciate the desire to go to the shared meeting that we previously had. And again, it was biannual. So we had a fall and a spring. So just for clarity.
And that was actually gonna be my next comment is I don't think we have time to give quarterly meetings to community associations. I think our time together is very precious. Our agenda is gonna be very full for the next 4 years. So, yeah.
I guess that leaves me, I do have a couple comments. I do understand the need for framework because as we're growing and getting bigger, there's gonna be other groups that come on board, but I do have to agree, to me when I read this, Sunset, for instance, their community association's also falling apart. It is difficult to pull people into a role where they're volunteering and then you have strict categories of like annual reporting and, you know, it's got to, I just think that, you know what, it probably doesn't need to be done so regimental. I mean, and also maybe open it up if you're a group of caring individuals in West Valley and West Terrace and you don't have a nonprofit, it shouldn't limit you from being able to represent your community if that's what you choose to do or that group of people chooses to do. I just think that it kind of putting too much structure on it then takes away that, I would be worried that as time goes, we don't know how many of these community associations, Glenbow's a great example, they've really risen up. Riverview's a very powerful community association, but then you have one with Sunset where it's dying, right? You can't even get people who want to volunteer on the board, let alone form a nonprofit with a bunch of rules behind it so that they can come speak to the town. So I think there's got to be a balance there. And that's what I think Councillor McFadden would probably like to see, is maybe just ease up on some of that. What does it look like? If you know what, at some point, every community is represented by a nonprofit association, maybe we don't have to worry about it, but right now I know that's not the case. And so I would worry that these people couldn't even come to the meeting because they don't fall into that criteria, which now is limiting, it's eliminating them out. And I agree, like, I don't know what would cost $15,000 to host these, other than, I understand that sure there's staff time, but if you take it down to a biannual meeting, really it was 3 hours long. I don't know what would be costing us 15 grand to be able to run that as a community. And I think let's take it down to the bare minimum. Really, it was an information sharing session that I loved about him, and I think that's what Councilor McFadden loved about him too, not to speak on your behalf. And the only other question that I had on the HOA aspect, because living in a community where I don't pay into an HOA, but my community has an HOA, is there any way that when a developer is coming to town to set up an HOA, that we can start to really limit how long they're operating the HOA without actually doing any improvements or building the amenities that they promised? Sunset is a huge issue for this. I mean, my kids will be long gone before any of those amenities that really part of that HOA that people are paying into is for a community center. It's for, it's for their great design, which I've looked online. It looks lovely. But that was back in 2016, and 9 years later, we have zero. We have zero there that they've done in that aspect of building for the community. I would just like to see if there's any way that, hey, if you're gonna set up an HOA, that's fine, but we expect that what you're promising the community is actually built within 2 years, 3 years, and if you're not, then you cancel the HOA, because honestly, like it's a little frustrating to see how much money people have paid there, and there's really no advantage. Just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. We'll certainly take that away. Again, there can be, we could take something where HOAs are required to report back on their activities to council. I think this is a little bit separate from this community association, but we've made some notes, and I'll certainly take that away.
Yeah, thanks. I thought just might be an opportunity to bring it up, not to direct anything, but
No,
thank you.
appreciate the feedback.
Mayor Nagel.
Could I suggest a path forwards? What if we just tried to call some casual, unstructured meetings with the community associations and had this on the agenda, and instead of punching it back to you, Michelle, to go off and figure out, we just take it there and see what that group can come up with as the first meeting? How do we want to structure community associations for the best results?
Yeah, we could do that too, if council agrees.
I like it. Councilor McFadden.
Yeah, sorry, I do want to apologize for coming off pretty heated there. I appreciate the good work and the thought that went into it, but yes, I was trying to have a very simple product. The only reason I requested a terms of reference is so council didn't get punted off of it again. So yes, it's a lot of work, and I appreciate that went into that. And so, yeah, bear with me. I clearly should have had a Snickers bar.
I also forgot to eat dinner, so I understand. But I would like to provide some context as well, just for why we ended up going this deep. And I would say it's some of the gaps that we're seeing in the community with the community associations. It's why that Q1 meeting with the internal working group of everyone and helping them with their volunteerism and their board development and all of that. We don't currently have that set up formally. So as administration, we were seeing this as a really great opportunity for council to be giving us direction that this is where we should be supporting the community associations. Yes, we need to be meeting with them and engaging with them, but we hold multiple agreements with multiple community associations. They're trying to do signs in parks, they're doing community gardens, they're doing community events. And right now we don't actually have any sort of framework around how do we work with them and how do we engage with them. So this is, that's why we went as deep as we did. But I can definitely appreciate bringing back the quarterly meetings. So.
Councilor McDonald.
Thank you. I liked a lot of this. I like kind of the helping develop leadership qualities and providing a framework for how we can invest in them. That's how I read a lot of it. But I do think there's just some barriers to entry that we don't want to be communicating. We want to encourage volunteerism at the individual community level, not discourage, which I agree with over here as well. So anywhere that we can soften up, I think is really helpful. But the general spirit of it, of investing in those community leaders, I'm a big fan of.
Perfect.
Okay, it doesn't look like any more
everybody.
questions. Ms.
Thank
Ambrose,
you.
did you get what you needed from that?
I think so. From my understanding, I'm setting up a casual, unstructured meeting with council and the community associations in Q1.
With that on the agenda.
With this on, with this on the agenda, yes.
And bringing me a Snickers bar.
I think that too.
Perfect. Thank you for the information. All right, council, and chances are, well, maybe not. Maybe we won't be going after 10 o'clock, hard to say. I'm watching the clock, though. Right now, I would like to call up, Mr. Hyman. He's going to obviously bring up Mr. Elaine, who's going to talk about the draft 2026 budget.
Yeah, good evening, Deputy Mayor and Council. Obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of work on this. Appreciate everything that you guys have done and the work of administration. So, in terms of the next steps, obviously we're at the Committee of the Whole. Next week is looking for the final approval and implementation. We've done 3 days of budget deliberations, and we've worked together. That work has got us to a final amended draft. We just wanted to get into exactly where we are in terms of what we initially brought you. The original recommendation was 3.25%, and then council identified through the deliberations the 5.1%, and subsequently came with reductions. So now our final amended recommendation for you is 4.07% for the final budget. Of course, the budget keeps day-to-day services stable and reliable. We've included what we've identified as important, and done that without cutting any essential services or delaying any maintenance. Okay, so here is a breakdown. You've seen this slide a few times. It's just updated. Every addition council made addressed a real pressure, risk, or priority, and our job was to fold those into the budget in a way that the community can depend on us. Once council's additions were included, administration undertook a review to find reductions that would not impact service levels. So there we've outlined the efficiencies, operational savings, the LAPP contribution adjustment, and delays in non-critical initiatives, which was represented the 1%. We're able to proceed on this. Again, we didn't reduce safety, compliance, or frontline services. We simply tightened up where it made sense to do so. In terms of the utilities and rate-supported services, nothing changed during the deliberations. So that remained consistent. These remain fully cost recovered. We're not using any tax-supported dollars in these budgets, and it keeps our system strong and protects our ratepayers. On the capital side, we made two small but important adjustments based on council's direction. The first is the wayfinding installation. This is the final phase of that project, and we've budgeted $100,000 in 2026 to complete the pieces related to safety and the replacement of damaged signage. The second item was the fencing in the Jim Uffelman off-leash parking lot. This came directly out of safety and user experience concerns that we've been hearing. The cost is $65,000, and it's being funded through the new Parks and Recreation Reserve, so no impact to the tax rate. This provides a summary and has been a very powerful slide throughout deliberation and through our engagement. The average residential impact, so you will see the total monthly increase of $15.96 and what is comprised within that. So you will see the monthly increase, and then on the bottom there, you will see the $191.48. This budget remains aligned with Council's strategic plan, maintaining reliability, ensuring safety, managing growth, and protecting Cochrane's long-term financial sustainability. And just in terms of a summary, it reflects Council's addition, reduces the overall impact, protects services residents depend on, maintains our financial discipline, and positions Cochrane for a stable 2026. So I'm very proud of the budget. I'm proud of this process. Appreciate the work that everyone has done. And then a good question, and certainly Councillor Singh, appreciate our conversations, what the community can expect from this budget. I think this is obviously a really important one. The amended budget reflects Council's priorities, maintains a stable, reliable services for residents. There are no reductions in service levels, and we've strengthened our ability to respond in key frontline areas such as parks. The community can expect a balanced, responsible budget that supports the services that people rely on every day while improving responsiveness. It also maintains quality, protects stability, and keeps the overall impact as low as possible. So, looking ahead, December 8th, that's next week. We'll be looking for council to adopt the consolidated operating and capital budgets. And really, before I get into questions, the big question I have for you is, hopefully this meets everyone's expectations in terms of the budget. We're not really anticipating any changes. What I'm hoping is that you can provide us direction here this evening, and that we'll be able to finalize this budget next week. So if there's any concerns, this would be the time to certainly bring those up. Otherwise, that does conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Nagel.
I actually just have a couple of questions for clarification. I know this is probably my last chance to ask them. Can you please remind me in our plan when the transportation master plan is supposed to begin work to start identifying new traffic projects?
The work would begin in 2026. So they'll do some of the preliminary work through the summer, really get into in 2027, collecting all of, we've got to get the data collected through next year, obviously with the interchange open as well. But the work starts next year.
And we would be on task or on an appropriate trajectory to identify some traffic projects, assuming the data supports them, and get them built into an offsite levy by the end of the term?
Oh, absolutely. That's,
okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to make sure, because we spent so much time talking about recreation, we kind of forgot about Cochrane's age-old problem, traffic.
Yes. Yes, that's not going away.
Yep. And then to that end, please remind me when in the plan we're expanding Center Avenue to 2 lanes on either side. Is it 2027?
I would have to, could I look into that and get back to you, Mayor Nagel? I know one of the things that we had always talked about was waiting until such time as the interchange was complete and seeing what the improvements in terms of traffic flow, because the over the tracks portion, working with CP, was going to be a significant portion of that. I believe it is in 2027, but I'd like to be able to look and confirm. So I'll get that answer for you.
And so I guess what could comfort me is it is in the immediate horizon to be done this term.
Yes,
okay.
In this term. Yes,
okay.
It is.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Big thumbs up to those two questions, and then I had a couple minor quibbles that I don't think will have an impact on the approval of the budget when we see it in a week. But we did talk about, Mayor Nagel, I think, had the point of in the rate-supported budget portion of budget, the cost for legal basement suite compliance being somewhat aggressive. I thought that was something that might have got rug swept, and I'd maybe like to readdress that next week if we could.
Okay, certainly we'll prepare that.
And then I've talked about fire service comparables to like municipalities and the fire services training budget, if we could just discuss that on 7 days from now. That's, again, I don't think will have any material impact to our final decision.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. You're reminding me of a conversation I had with a resident, and he was expecting that answer as well, so we will have that next week.
Great. And otherwise, yeah, carry on. Everything looks good.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't see any other questions, but I actually do have a question for you, but it's actually not number related. Through this entire process, and I have to say it's been enjoyable. When it comes to budgets, I guess, as enjoyable as a budget can be. But there were a couple suggestions that I think I brought up. I know there was one talking about public engagement piece, restructuring the meetings for next year. I just don't want those things to get lost. Is it possible to get a summary somewhere of some of those things that we had talked about, you know, adding things into the budget, different columns? Let's figure out a plan for engagement. What does that look like? What is this council looking to engage like? And then kind of setting the stage for next year already. Sometimes we bring these things up and it's like, oh yeah, I'll get back to you. And then it kind of just gets lost in the regular business of the town, and I don't really want to lose that momentum. I'd like us to stay on track of making sure that those things are done. And I know Councillor Singh brought up about, I know he's expressed interest in a finance committee, but I just don't want to lose sight of those things as we go forward.
Yeah, through the deputy mayor, those are great points. We have been taking notes around those comments, and early January, we're engaging in a process where budget becomes much more of a year-long activity rather than sort of a sequential piece. And so we'd love to come back and sort of share the ideas of what we've heard and then see if there's anything else that we could add to that process to make that better for council and better for the community, for sure. So you'll be hearing more from us in that area. But those are that's the kind of planning we want to do to make sure that we're able to adjust and then, you know, best represent what's needed in that space. So more to come for sure on that.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate it. Obviously, it has nothing to do with next week, but I just thought while we're in this venue of asking that question, just to make sure that it doesn't get lost. So I appreciate that update.
I would just make the comment, our team is committed to continuous improvement. I know this is the first budget as this group, and I'm really happy with the results, but I want to build on that and get even better as we move forward. So we'll look at all the comments that we've got, as Mr. Blanchette said, and there'll be some additional touch points this year with council or next year, excuse me, with strategic planning, and perhaps we'll have a touch point just based on budget and some of the things that become your priorities. So
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think the public portion of the meeting is over. So thank you to people for joining us. Okay. Okay, before we go into closed session, I'm going to look for a motion to go past 10. Councillor Singh? All in favor? And thank you to the public for joining us. And now I'll make a motion to go in camera.
I don't know if you guys just want to take a 5-minute break. You've been up here for a long time, so and honestly, I don't think it will be a long discussion. I'll try, and Councillor McFadden is familiar with this. Oh,
we're still live. I just have to get the motion.
Yeah.
Anybody want to make the motion? Councillor McFadden, all in favor?
Sorry.
Now we're going in camera.